This is episode 3 of the Jags Show. When I started this podcast, I knew that I wanted to have Mark Zathey on at some point. He has been influential more than probably he even knows. He coached my D license back when I was 19 or 20 years old, and we discussed that in the show. Then, in a short time, within about 2 or 3 years, I got to work with him through the Olympic Development Program back when it was in its heyday, and I got to work with him and some other legends. And then a full circle moment, I am taking my C license in Bradenton, Florida at IMG, and he is auditing his A license. At this time, I think he was like the interim director of coaching for the state of Michigan. And he is currently a staff member of the Jags, where he is their coaching education director. How many clubs in the country have a director of coaching education? They have directors of coaching. How often does a director of coaching actually get to coach coaches? Most of the time, I joke, directors of coaching should be called directors of parents, because most of the time they're spent talking to parents. Not at the Jags, and not Mark Zathey. He's also at his alma mater. He is the men's coach at Madonna University. He used to be the women's coach of Madonna University. And then he is also the technical director of the state of Michigan. This one is an education. He talks about, obviously, coaching education. He talks about when Christian Pulisic was at his club for 3 years. And he's been all over the world learning and honing his craft of coaching. He's been to South America. He's been to Europe. He's been to Africa. And to see what everybody else is doing and to see different tactics and different styles of coaching. As always, please like, subscribe, and share this everywhere. On YouTube, I want 5,000 subscribers by Christmas. And for audio, I want 100,000 downloads by Christmas. And I think it's going to happen, guys. Please keep on sharing this. Thank you so much for the support, and enjoy getting to know Mark Zathey.
I hate soccer.
I was hearing impaired, but I didn't realize how much I read lips all my childhood through adulthood until COVID. People started covering their faces. I'm like, man, I don't hear very well. And there was quite a few times parents in the club or friends or players, like I'd have my back turned and they'd be saying, Z, you know, and the look on their face was like, you ignoring me? You know, I am sorry, I'm hearing impaired. You know, if I have my back turned, I may not hear you, you know. So, but I could get along well enough where people wouldn't realize it overtly, you know.
Right.
But my hearing has been impacted inside my right ear. I had three surgeries in the fall during our Madonna season. The doc's like, yeah, you have to take off 6 to 8 weeks of work. And I'm like, we had a game the next day after my first surgery. I was there. So I go, yeah, that's not going to, okay, doc, you know. So my lifestyle doesn't accommodate that.
Right.
So I got to put in some hard yards. So I just went to him last week and I said, hey, you know, progress on my ear and how it's healing. And he's like, everything looks good. And a silly thing, kind of first world problems. I'm not worried about the cosmetic, like cool points anymore, but I want to start exercising more now that I'm feeling a little bit better and healthy. My right ear, he took out so much cartilage and went so deep, it's kind of collapsed against the side of my head. And I'm like, I sweat a lot, like when I'm exercising, like taking like 2-3 showers a day minimum, you know? And I go, I don't necessarily really care how it looks. I just want you to pull it off the side of my head a little bit. And he started laughing. He goes, I could see that. You know, when I explained why. He goes, Mark, you're not going to be healed until like November of 26.
Okay.
I went really deep inside your ear. I was really nervous. I was going to lose my hearing in my right ear. So I just had like a bump under my skin. Nobody could see it, but it bothered me.
And you just felt it?
Yeah, I felt it, like cleaning out my ears.
Yeah.
I could feel it. So I just dug it out with my fingernail because it bothered me. Nobody could see it, but it wasn't healing. So people that would see me every day, because I'm stubborn and not too bright, were like, hey, what's in your ear? Like, that's not healing. I would look at a scab, and then I'd take a shower, water would wash it out, and scab again, copy and paste, rinse and repeat. So I finally go to the dermatologist. They're like, yeah, we should do a biopsy. And I said, I also have this spot on my shoulder, and I haven't taken my shirt off out in the sunlight. I was about maybe 22 years old, but came back a few weeks later, like, hey, you have skin cancer. I was like, oh, man, I hear that word, stomach turns a little bit. They're like, hey, it's basal cell. It's not too aggressive. It's at least concerning, and blah, blah, blah. So I went up, and my mom used to work in the medical field. So she worked for a neurosurgeon for a long time. And when I was a kid, and then she worked for Craniofacial Institute. I don't know if you would remember. You were probably too young. Dr. Ian Jackson was on 60 Minutes. They were kind of the infamous plastic surgeons, went to Detroit. And she goes, so she knew. She goes, go see Dr. Julio Sosa. He's who I recommend. So I go see him. He's charming guy. And I could see when he looked in my ear, kind of his facial expression changed. And he tried to stay kind of calm and joking and super charismatic. But I could see his jaw clench a little bit. I'm thinking to myself, well, he just like a kind of abrupt, not rudely, but abruptly left the room. So I'm thinking to myself, there's a red flag. Not that I'm Captain Intuition, but that's not good. So he comes back in and just was like, hey, it's above my pay grade. Kind of like he wasn't good enough. And I'm like, oh, this is serious. So recommended Dr. Fishman, who's done plastics like head and neck for over 30 years. And he goes, I'll do it. I go, well, Doc, I'm almost 50 years old. However it looks, I'm not worried about that stuff anymore. I need to be able to hear because I'm already legally deaf in my left ear. So he goes, oh, okay. He goes, well, I'll do it. I'll take care of you. So long story long. 3 surgeries later, cancer-free. I'm very grateful.
Awesome.
But I still feel a little bit insecure about my hearing has been impacted. He's convinced when I fully heal, like by November, it'll be better.
Yeah.
But I just, for lifestyle, social relationships, and then work, I'm like, man, I'm already 1 for 2. I don't want to go 0 for 2, man. I'll be sweeping the floors,
Yeah.
Like, I don't see myself writing computer code here. I need that. So.
That's funny that you said that about like the doctor leaving, because I think this is probably when we were rooming together in Bradenton or whatever, but you had taken one of the NSCAA courses.
Oh, yeah.
And they knew who you were, and you were the substitute teacher, as you used to say.
Yeah, still do.
Doing the directorship or whatever. And you got you were already A licensed. You were already on US soccer staff for education. And then you got docked points for like not getting out there fast enough or something like that. Or that was your correction. And you were like, wait a minute. When paramedics walk out of the they never run because they got to assess the situation, stay calm, because if they're running, what is the patient or what is the person that needs them?
And their own heart rate.
Right.
They lose their sort of calmness, if you will. That was the analogy that they used at U.S. Soccer. Then I was always curious about United Soccer Coaches Pathway, the NSCA at the time.
Yep.
And I had always heard really good things about their coaching ed. So I said to myself, I don't feel comfortable skipping to the premier diploma. I'm going to start where everybody else starts. So I started this national diploma, because a lot of people, I just teach now grassroots, used to be the E, and now D licenses. It's a common question. And I would always say, always is a swear word, but I would always say, well, I've heard, well, I think other high school coaches have taken it, club coaches have had a good experience, but I didn't know. And I said, if I'm going to walk down this road, if this is my path, I need to live it, and I shouldn't be skipping anything. I should go through a process like anyone else. So I took the national diploma. And, I honestly don't remember if it was a national or advanced national, but that was a criticism, not that I'm a fast walker. I was always too slow to play soccer. However, I walked out kind of deliberate on purpose because when we think about it this way, what's happening on the ball, what's happening near the ball, what's happening away from the ball. And the coach needs to be able to see all those lenses. And the coaching schools didn't use that terminology or vernacular, but they would say you're not only fixing or addressing what's happening on the ball, you got to impact every other player.
Yeah.
If you're going to freeze it and stop it, it can't be about one or two players. It's got to be about how that picture relates for the greater good in your rhythm of your team, whatever your topic is. So Craig Carlson, I think, who leads Wisconsin coaching, great guy, old soul, great guy. And just love being around him. Really so funny and so good. And he will say that a lot. He probably got it off Jim Launder, who ran Wisconsin for a long time.
Is Jim still with us?
I think he's working for the Federation still.
Oh, okay, good.
Sort of in retirement, can pick his spots.
Gotcha.
But he's given so much to the game. He still is, and the game's better to have him in it.
Yeah.
He was assisting the forward Madison, the USL 1.
Yeah.
And then I don't think he's full-time with the state association, but he still works for U.S. Soccer. I think he's still in the coaching ed.
Okay.
Loves to give back to the game. I think Craig got it from Jim of like, hey, what's happening on the ball, what's happening near the ball, and what's happening away from the ball. And that coaching tree in that world came from Bob Gansler.
Yep.
He ran, they were not all, but he's the OG of that coaching tree over there, the Godfather. So, I don't know this to be true, but I think that phrase came from Bob Gansler.
How quickly did you start coaching and then get right into the coaching education? Because you coached my D license.
Yeah, I was young. Yeah,
when I was 19, I want to say I was 19 or 20, and you were the head of my D license at Wixom.
Huh.
And it was you and Andy Vanover.
Okay. How old are you now?
I am 41.
Okay, 49.
And then it was... I want to say Nick Darren did something with you too.
Okay.
And then you might remember this class specifically because of two guys that were in it. They were already legit coaches. It was Mark Franklin and Tony Deacon.
Oh yeah, man, I miss Tony.
Yeah, I do too.
What a guy, man. I still use some activities and sayings
that Tony
shared with me when we coached the Madonna women together. We worked in the club for a long time.
Yeah.
And he was just he's a different cat, but just a beautiful man. I miss him. I
mean, I was so nervous when the testing portion came and I had to coach Tony in my topic. And Tony's just like, breathe. Like under his breath, telling me, he's like, just relax. Because he was probably 6 or 7 years older than I was. Yeah. And
ton of experience.
And just had so much more experience. I was 19 and 20.
Well, he was a Corver guy. He could master the ball and the player on the ball.
Yeah.
And could deliver the method and how to teach technique and skill. Not just technique of going to a disc and doing a double step over, but where's the pressure coming from? Dribble in, run out, get him on the wrong foot, attack the heel. So some of the things that come to mind when I think of him in terms of his coaching rhythm. But he also went through UEFA licensing. Mm-hmm. He also could look off the ball and understand spacing. Athletic Bilbao, they talk about the relationship to the player and the ball, the relationship to the player and his or her teammates. Now, part of that social and part of that is spacing and construction. If you're going to have a 10 that doesn't defend, then you need a couple sixes to carry the water. In that mini society, in that ecosystem, what is the rhythm of the team in that little structure? How do they work and combine with each other? So it's relationship to ball player, relationship to teammates, relationship to the opponents, then relationship to space. And Tony didn't use that language, but he taught that way.
Yeah.
And it's not common that I hear that stuff. Oh yeah, he was so good for the game. Taught me a lot. I love sharing the game with him.
Do you think that coaches not skip steps, but do you think that a lot of coaches skip portions of that? Because you said the relationship with the ball and relationship with your teammates on the field and relationship to space. I feel like so many coaches want to skip the relationship with the ball. And they want to go right into team tactics and game situations and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Do you think?
well, I think part of that is where they're comfortable and what gives them their sense of satisfaction and value. So for coaches that I see coming into like coaching at like D licenses and such, they're there to give back to the game. They're not soccer natives. They were baseball or football, or their parents coaching their kids. They don't know all the nuances of technique and body shape because they haven't lived it. Where they could teach me a lot about how to shoot a basketball or swing a baseball bat. But they understand the invasion sports. We're going to defend something, we're going to attack something. Hockey, lacrosse, even American football, basketball for sure. Even the court sports, tennis, volleyball. What space am I taking away? What space do I want to exploit? They feel comfortable with that from the other sports that they've played. So I think part of it is where they're comfortable. And I think part of it is what their content knowledge is. And then the social forces, in my opinion, they are about outcome. Can you win the game? Even at really young ages, whether that's the investment parents are making financially or time commitment, or coaches want to advance their own sort of pathway and they feel like if they win more, that will happen. And the whole system, I think, rewards team development over player development. Right? In America, when I go to Clairefontaine in France, when I was at Ajax, when I'm in Argentina at Estudiantes, I'm in Argentina at Estudiantes for like a week, and I never saw a kid smile. It was crazy. But they train. I mean, they train like dogs. Well, like the third or fourth day we're going there, it's sort of out in an agricultural area, not in a city, not like Boca and River, and a beautiful area, by the way. But we're out these dirt roads, and I see like this shiny material through the trees, like leaves, and I'm like sun's reflecting off it. I'm like, it's in the morning. I'm sipping on some coffee, like brain fog, trying to wake up, and being a muppet. And I'm like, hey man, like, what is that over there? And he goes, hey, I don't remember the percentage you told me, but it's almost 3/4 of the kids in their youth academy, they live out in this sort of agricultural area. There's no running water, there's no toilets. I mean, they're like living off the land. And it just blew my mind. You know, I lived in Redford most of my adult life. I grew up in Livonia, Michigan. When you go on a YouTube video or you look at a website, you don't live it like that. And I didn't stay there long. I was a guest. I just observed for a little bit. I'm in and I'm out, back to work. But when you're thinking about how players are developed, part of it is you have to understand who they are and what situation they're coming from. So the pressure those kids felt was the job. You're going to be the breadwinner as the kid.
Family.
Our kids play soccer. For us, our kids, it's play. It's a hobby, so to speak, for most of our kids. For them, that was their work. More important than going to school. More important than going to school. Where in the environment that I grew up in, if you ever talk to a parent about, well, maybe your kid doesn't go to school and just trains more up, it's like crazy. So what are our values? So it's a totally different world. I'm standing next to an agent, and I was just so naive. I'm just vomiting dumb questions out of my mouth, and he's pulling out a Marlboro. I go, hey, at what age can you like sell a player like to a different club? Like, that's why you're here. I'm here I want to coach and get better.
Right.
I'm just here to learn. And he looked at me like that was the dumbest thing. He goes, any age, man, any age. Well, we have child labor laws here.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like, if the world's not black and white in terms of right or wrong, if it's green, we're not incentivized to pour ourselves into player development because we're not selling. And I don't mean we as you or I. I just mean our soccer community overall.
Of course.
So, and I'm not trying to cast judgment, but understanding the why is really important to me. Not to say it's right or wrong, or I like it or I don't, but to understand that. And then you go watch those kids. Then I look through a different lens when I see those kids train. And it was, the amount of repetitions those kids got in, and I mean focused, not, juggle a ball while a couple other guys get a drink of water while the coach sets up the next activity of just, are we investing time or spending time? I mean, really, really, really shaping a ball and just rep after rep after rep. Because for them, it was work. And I don't say that to boast about their player development.
Right.
And I don't say it to turn my nose down at them. It's just, that's the reality. So it's really different in other parts of the world. And I don't know that it's better or worse, but it's different.
I mean, when you go to all these spots, and you go to Ajax and you go to Argentina, is it more the culture that develops the player rather than coaching? Because I remember Todd Derby, right? Mm-hmm. Todd came back, and I think he went somewhere overseas, maybe Spain, and it was just rondos. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, they're not doing anything differently over there coaching-wise for the most part. Mm-hmm. So he was just like, what is the big difference? I'm running the same sessions as they are over there, but it's that attention to detail. It's the way out for those kids that, hey, I got to get better. Like if I don't play on the weekend, I have to go home and hit a ball against a wall 1,000 times or work on my fitness level or do something, because I feel like the player is invested. And you said invested. Are we investing time or spending time?
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Is the player invested here as much as over there?
I do think a lot of it's culture in terms of parents knowing the game, grandparents knowing the game, family members knowing the game, and there's different depth of language and understanding when we're watching a game, right? They're looking through a much, much deeper lens. And all that is a part of the socialization of the player. And then part of it is sort of geography, like Northern Europe. I mean, now with technology, it feels going underground stadiums, artificial lighting. But if you go back to let's say the 90s, I feel my age. Teams in Northern Europe would play a much more vertical style, I call the real estate game, combine out wide, get to the end line, cut back cross type thing. So it's safer. Ball gets stuck in the mud and you're back third and you're playing 8, 10, 12, 15-yard passes and you're opening up to build out, to play. I'm being a little bit of a smart aleck, the beautiful game. It's like, well, you're exposed, So in those environments, I think culturally it was more celebrated and applauded, like Italy in the 90s. Like they applaud defending.
Yeah.
That's games
4-4-2. Yeah.
Like just lock it down, block of 8.
Yeah.
And just like that was culturally celebrated. They're really good at it. Northern Europe, how do you be effective? Southern Europe, Portugal, Spain, a little bit short, a little bit build up. I was on the ball. So there's a different rhythm. Same in Africa. Like I went to Ghana a little bit. The guy I met in France used to work with the French Federation for 18 years, like really good. I met him on a coach's trip. We stayed in touch. He coached Red Bull Ghana's pro team. He's like, hey, if you want to take a real trip, come back to France. We'll go to Ghana. I want to see my old players. They built a school, the teachers, whole thing. I go, hey, man, I'm in, And it was amazing. They played just like Southern Europe. I mean, just beautiful players. I mean, so good. So that's culture. The challenge, I think, of the U.S. is what's an American meal anymore? And my great grandparents escaped Northern Italy in World War I, when Campo got bombed to shit. My grandfather was a prisoner of war in World War II. We don't have a Jewish culture, but when Germans invaded Poland, my grandpa fought and was taken prisoner. And instead of going on the train, they said, well, you look pretty fit. Why don't you go in the potato fields and farm for the German soldiers? And he was able to escape, So my story is of immigration. So I don't want to say good or bad or right or wrong or anything like that. But, in some communities, like I watched the men's team Alianza, one of the kids, a high school kid, is looking to come play for us in the fall, Southwest Detroit. Okay, one American meal in Southwest Detroit might be, tacos or whatever, right? It's a heavy Hispanic neighborhood there.
Right.
Where on the west side of Michigan or different part of the country, an American meal may mean something different. Well, same for soccer. These guys that come in to run coaching ed, you get a German, and there's a Belgium, and there's a Dutch, a couple Americans, and then, it's sort of right now Didier from France. Not always, it's a swear word, but typically when the guys come in from a country in Europe, they're like, hey, I know America's a big country, and I get it. And then after 2 years, if you ask them, it's like, I knew it was a big country in terms of space, but I didn't realize how diverse it is. It's really similar to the European continent versus Belgium or France or Italy. And they all have their own styles, so to speak, right? Part of it's maybe weather, part of it's resources. So it's hard to wrap our arms around it. Matt Crocker just left for Saudi Arabia, right? And people, well, maybe he's taking a bag of money. I don't know, and I don't know the details, but third hand, he was really interested in the youth system and trying to get it more streamlined.
Right.
And that's a monster.
Yeah. And then he saw it and he was like, I'm leaving.
It's a monster. Well, and like when Coach K from Duke basketball, Mike Krzyzewski, was at the end of his tenure, he used the language, we should have a czar of college basketball. It's different. It's a revenue sport. It's not an Olympic sport or a non-revenue sport, soccer, softball. And I don't mean to say any of that dismissively, but basketball, the recruiting, the AAU, the money, it's different. When Nick Saban, right, took his flowers, left Alabama, rightfully so, he said, well, there should be a czar of college football. Yeah. It's its own, it's not like the rest of the college sports, right? Alabama coming to play U of M football is a little bit different than the wrestling team, going to UCLA or the soccer team or softball team, So I think we have to be careful. It's such a broad topic, and think about player development. I mean, some of these. I'm thinking about. I had an opportunity to work with Christian Pulisic for just 1 year. Yep. Eric Rudlin had him. Nick Darren had worked with him, and I kind of co-coached the team with Mark. It's not like I was the guy. My only claim to fame is not to screw him up. I was listening to a podcast recently. I don't remember which one. I'm kind of saying this third hand. The guest on the podcast, when he was at La Masia, he had lunch or dinner with the guy that coached their U14 team that had Xavi, Iniesta, Messi. And that was his directive at La Masia.
Just don't mess him up.
Don't mess him up. Just nurture the person. They have the flair. They have these gifts. Try to make them into a whole player. Okay? But your primary objective is just not to mess. You don't need to make them.
Right.
Just don't mess them up. Just compliment, support, guide. But it was about, they talk a lot about La Masia, like take care of the person.
Right.
And the player will come along with it.
And I think that what we've been kind of shoved down our throats over the last 16 years is that La Masia is the way to develop players. So we have to take their curriculum, and it's like, no, we need to take how they nurture and how they develop and how they make sure that you don't ruin them, and I feel like sometimes we see players and then we take away something that made them special.
Right.
Because we want them to play our way or this system or this style. And we don't nurture the players like they do. I think we're getting better at it.
I do. The coaching ed, and there's some criticisms with that, has really swayed that way. in terms of how you relate to the player, how you speak to the player. And the coaching ed courses are so finite in terms of time and limited. And I'm kind of specifically thinking about the grassroots and the D licenses, more entry level with U.S. soccer. You got to pick what you're going to highlight in a course. What topics do you really want to cover, and where's there an expectation? So a lot of the technical stuff, like I can remember an E license grading parents who grew up playing, baseball or basketball. They're just there to coach a grassroots team. I don't like labels, but like a rec team for the sake of the conversation. And just like, I just want my kids in the neighborhood want to play soccer, and I'm one to coach.
Right.
But they didn't know all the technical nuance, lock the ankle, balance, follow through, or whatever. And they had a rough idea of the tactics, and I'm like grading them according to the standards of the time. And that was intimidating. And I would, man, if I went to a lacrosse license or a wrestling license or hockey, I'd fish out of water, right?
Right.
So you walk them out in their shoes, and I really appreciated their bravery to step out of their comfort zone for the sake of their kids and their community. That pendulum has since swung towards it's not less important, but it's maybe more important to make sure the kid enjoys the game, to continue playing, to learn as he or she goes, versus, a coaching point on striking the ball or receiving out of the air, So it's much more about supporting the person in the grassroots level now. And there's some criticisms to that, like, hey, we've gotten away from the ball. We've gotten too far away from the field.
Right.
We still need to do a better job to develop players. One of the things you mentioned earlier tipped my bad memory. You were talking about sort of different cultures in Europe. I had the opportunity in a coach's trip. We had a private audience talk about open mouth, insert foot. And I was like, I was the king of something. Gerard Houllier, people were too, I think, awestruck and a little bit intimidated to ask him any questions. He spoke to us for a little bit. So he was long past coaching in, French national team, but he was still working for the Federation, and he was kind of contracted through Red Bull. So he was kind of an advisory to Red Bull soccer or football, kind of global director, if you will. So we had an audience with him. It was like 12 of us, and listened to him for a while, his thoughts, and nobody wanted to ask him a question, right? So he's like, well, do you guys have anything? He didn't say it this way. The way I think of it is he's talking at us instead of with us. And we were all happy to listen, trust me. And so nobody wanted to ask a question. So I'm like, all right, I'll open mouth insert for here. So I thought I threw him a softball. And the look he gave me, he was a really great guy.
Yeah.
But the look he gave me, I wanted to crawl into a hole. So my silly question was, hey, you've been in America now, and you've been around it with New York Red Bull and the Youth Academy. Do you think the Americans are catching up at all in the global game? And he just kind of took a sharp look at me and then kind of smirked, kind of backed off the facial expression a little bit. He goes, son, you've been to Clairefontaine on this trip, right? I go, yeah. Oh, yeah. Unbelievable, He goes, all right, so how often do the kids train? I go, well, Monday through Thursday, they train twice a day, morning, evening. They train Friday morning. And then they go back to their families on the weekend and play for their club. They get a game a week with their club. It's really important for the socialization to get the kids back to their families and playing in their club to get a good game. So he goes, all right, so 9 times a week they train. How many times a week do your kids train?
Oh my God.
And he backed it up with, just a real sincere laugh. He goes, hey, it's, appreciate your question, but the standard's the standard, So, and that's changing a lot. I'm kind of dating myself with this coaching ed trip years going by, but before there were any MLS residency academy, now Real Salt Lake, and there's a lot more investment into player development.
Yeah.
So that answer, I think, would change a little bit now for a small percentage.
Right.
And if you think about it, these kids at Clairefontaine, that's a small percentage too. And they have regional training centers all around France, and Clairefontaine's down the infamous one because that's where the coaching ed stuff is. That's where the national teams train. You know, that's kind of the nerve center, or
Right.
the mothership, as I call it, inappropriately. But it's only the top kids. You know, it's not like every kid in France trains 9 times a week, right? So, and they have some of the same challenges that Ajax. The kids are on their phones. You know, street soccer is when I was at Ajax. One of the coolest things, you're probably too young for this, but when I was a kid, we would play where high velocity is, but there was like this softball diamonds and like this cleats restaurant right on the parking lot. They would roll out that old school AstroTurf right on the parking lot and put up like hockey boards, put up a dome. So they had like this boarded like 6v6 field, and then next to it was like this 3v3 kind of a warm-up field.
Yeah.
You know? And at Ajax, they had like those 3v3 fields with boards, you know? And we're leaving training, and it just by silly coincidence, I'm walking off the field, and the guy next to me is like their youth academy director. Well, a lot of their guys coaching in their youth system are former pros. So after they get done with their training session, which is really about a lot of functional training, a lot about like skills, technique under pressure. In what part of the field are you? What position are you playing? It's very specific, even at young ages. And he goes, hey, we just don't think kids play anymore. We used to not do this, but they're not playing on their own, whether it's safety concerns or technology. But we need to create an environment where they're solving problems on their own. We need to foster some creativity, some flair. It has to be a part of our structure for the total player. So they have, and the coaches would join in, and kids of different ages in the IXU teams. They didn't have to. It was like a Uber taxi cab tidal wave before the training. If you're part of IX, they will offer working parents. They will pick the kids up. The club will pick them up. Real Madrid did the same thing. And then the parents are supposed to pick them up and take them home after the training, reconnect with the family, go get dinner. But before the training, like there's like hundreds of yellow cars coming in, you know, that are all in contract with IX, dropping the kids off. But afterwards, parents are kind of hanging around, talking to each other. Kids are hanging around, and they're playing like these street games. And the former pros that are now coaching are like doing rainbows over the kids, flicking the ball, playing the ball off the boards, just kind of the opposite of how their training sessions looked. They were ultra scripted, if you will.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was an incredible balance that really stuck with me. We had Mike Macko. Remember Macko in Chicago Magic?
Yeah.
Now coaching Chicago Fire 2
Okay.
pro team, the second MLS Next Pro. We had him come in for MSYSA for coaching ed. And he goes, hey, I'm good on the field. You know, I don't feel as comfortable in the classroom. I'm not an academic. You know, I'm about the game. I'm on the field. I go, well, you built one of the, maybe the top boys side club in the country in your heyday. Like, people want to know how you built the club. You made some players, man. There's a lot of stars over that badge. National championships, when there was really only one pathway to a youth national championship,
Exactly.
right? In that era. So people want to hear that. And he was like, you think so? You know, I go, oh, no, I know so. You know, I don't know much, but I know that. And it was awesome. But one of the things that was, I asked a question, there were a lot of different questions, but the one I wanted to know is, which program in your club do you think had the most impact with your players? If you had to pick one. And he said for their like first and second teams, their like top team, like A and B team, if you will, on the weekends that they didn't have games, they had a weekend off in the fall and spring. They would create like a mock street soccer, like the high school age kids would all come to the field. Coaches were there to kind of referee. They could coach individuals, but it was sort of a Rick Pitino, like, hey, assistants get 8 seconds to make a point. That's it. You can't get your point across in 8 seconds while we're playing. Don't talk. Talk to the guy afterwards. We're in the flow. And that was kind of what they talked about with Chicago Magic. And there was a time with the Richardsons where the Chicago Soccer's kids and the Chicago Magic kids would train together. And this idea of iron sharpens iron, like, let's get all the high school boys together. Let's get the 2 top clubs together. Let's mix them. And just for the love of the game, just let them play. So coaches can coach an individual, but you can't stop it. And just there to keep score, referee, make sure, no one gets hurt. And he said that was like the most impactful program to develop players and teams in his club.
Isn't that amazing?
And it was like, we think about the costs to make all this happen, field costs. If you want good coaches, you got to pay them, right? It's not top-down money. I was in Cologne, Germany, and a guy was kind of speaking of, just like a year ago, speaking in kind of a disparaging way about all the money and youth soccer. And I'm thinking to myself, you got like a 60,000 seat stadium. Like you guys are paying for your coaches too. You're paying for your fields too. It's just coming from the first team. It's coming from the fans. The money's coming from somewhere else. We're not top down. Like I kind of went on the rails here with Nick Saban's our football coach.
Yeah.
We're not top down. We're community driven. We're U.S. Soccer's voting structure was grassroots. When it really took hold in the 70s, yeah, you could form a club. Yeah, you could join this league. Yeah, you can vote in these elections for MSYSA. MSYSA can vote for U.S. Soccer elections. It's all bottom up. Where when our peers come in from Europe, and it's like, guy comes in from Germany, he's like, well, why doesn't U.S. Soccer just say it has to be this way?
Exactly.
Like it has to be this league. Like limit the travel, limit the tournaments, limit this, limit that. I go, well, like capitalism, it's hard to argue against it, but there's some pros and cons.
You're right.
If that coach is unhappy, he can join a different club. If that group of coaches are happy, they start their own club. If they don't like the league, they join their own league. They make their own league.
Yeah, they start their own league.
It's like, it's hard to it's not hard to set the standards, but it's hard to kind of limit this. It's a different ecosystem because the money's the parents believe in it, they support it.
Exactly.
But they're the true voters.
Right.
If it doesn't work, the parents won't show up. They may or may not fill out a survey of how the club's doing, but they vote with their money, right? I want my kid playing in this club or I don't. And there's such a bandwidth of different reasons, it's hard to kind of dial all that in. So it's a pretty holistic topic.
It's wild and it's complicated. And a lot of people don't know the history.
Yeah.
They don't know that U.S. Soccer was founded in 1913 and they didn't truly get into youth soccer until 2007 with the DA.
Yeah.
Because U.S. Youth Soccer was its own separate entity that kind of came in AYSO and then now it's crazy because you have competing governing bodies. And where else do we have competing governing bodies? I shouldn't say governing bodies, but I mean competing. You have U.S. Club Soccer that filled a void because U.S. Soccer, I think, made a mistake in 2007 when they said, our girls are fine. Our girls, we're one of the best in the world. We'll get to the girls later. We need to focus on the men. And then that allowed U.S. Club Soccer to really take hold and have the ECNL and everything. And then they all do kind of what they want.
Yeah, and I think the genders were a big part of that story. But I don't know this to be true. My understanding is the main driver of U.S. Club is we want to take more ownership as soccer people of the player experience. They felt like there were too many people who were non-soccer people who were making decisions. And I'm a USYS guy. I'm a USYS supporter. So I'm not trying to throw stones from a glass house. But when I listened to the other side, like what really launched U.S. Club Soccer? It's like, well, a bunch of soccer guys got together, were frustrated about State Cup has to be played at this time, or you have to play in this league, or you can't pass card kids, or you can't travel out of state. There were all these sort of limitations. When I was a kid growing up, in Livonia, Vardar and Wolves were in Livonia. And I was 76, but prior to me, Livonia Wolves was sort of sponsored through the Livonia YMCA. But there was a Wolves men's team, like Paul Cicluna and those guys played on the men's team.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vardar had a men's team. Rick Sawicki, his son Aaron was a really good player. Rick Sawicki played college football. You know, I don't mean to say this in a disparaging way, but Rick Sawicki worked, you know, for Bill Brown Ford, Pat Milliken Ford, selling cars. Like, he wasn't a soccer native, so to speak, but him and his wife Lynn just so passionate about the game. They ran Vardar and Livonia for a long time. Well, if you had a men's team, the rules at the time were you could get kids from any community.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were a community team, you could only get kids from that community.
It had to be a certain percentage of Livonia kids.
So Plymouth only had kids from like Plymouth or Plymouth Canton.
Exactly.
And Livonia, the Livonia club could only have kids from like Livonia.
And maybe Novi.
Yeah, so like each of these communities just had kids from their own, I'm going to be naive here and say from their own zip code, if you will, where Vardar and Wolves could get kids from anywhere and weren't hiding the fact they wanted to be good. So it was just sort of meritocracy. Well, the rules changed later, right, to allow everyone to play in that same platform. A team from Plymouth could have kids from anywhere. But
Right.
when it first started, it was very pro-community, some would say. Or if you look at the other side of that coin, it was pretty restrictive. Like, I live in Redford now. Why shouldn't I be able to play in Livonia? You know? So it's, to your point, it started from that grassroots era that was just supposed to support community involvement, kids out playing in parks that you didn't have to rent, you know, you didn't need a certificate of insurance, you know, on and on and on. So, you know, we live in a different era. So I'm not here to say it's better or worse, but it's a different world. But I think these U.S. club soccer guys wanted soccer people making soccer decisions.
Yep.
So, and I'm not saying that I agree with it or not, but I just wanted to understand, like, hey, why did this start? You know, it's like, well, we go to USYS, this league, this state board, this and that. You know, we're not allowed to develop our players how we want to develop them. You know, age segregation is an example, right? If you're South America, Europe. I was in Ghana. This kid was like 12 years old, 13 years old, playing with like kids that are 17, 18 years old. I mean, it was, they played him at like right back. You know, you could see the left winger was not going into a hard tackle, but the speed of the game was flying and he was able to cope. He couldn't cope with the physicality, but they didn't put him under that pressure.
Right.
Like, that kid's developing different. That 12-year-old's developing different versus what we're accustomed to. No, you know, playing your age group, you know, this and that. So it's to your point, it's complicated. I don't have a good punchline.
It's crazy.
I think we've come a long way. I think we're doing well, but we have a long way to go. You know, and I don't think our women's side has gotten any worse in any way.
No.
I think the other countries have started to support their women's side. So the standards are just, you know, really, 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 I mean, Title IX and women's college soccer really ushered in, you know, prominence for our U.S. national team. But now the other countries are really pouring into their women's sides. So it's fun to watch.
And I think going back to the culture part, I think that's why we've not caught, but that's why the rest of the world has made a gigantic leap in the women's game so quickly, because they grew up waking up on Saturday mornings and having breakfast and talking about the Manchester United game.
Sure.
And it's just in that culture. And then their brothers played and their grandpas played and their grandmas played. And it's just crazy.
I can remember, talking about being a dumb American, I can remember going to watch, I was coaching the Madonna Women, so it was 01 to 05 at the time.
Yeah.
Tony Deacon was coaching a Birmingham Blazers team.
Yeah.
Okay, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
They were good. And they were, so Paul Thomas, who
is now the DOC.
Yeah, we worked together in MSY. I kind of lean more towards ODP. He does more coaching. I kind of assist him in coaching it. He's really, really highly, he does teaches a lot of B licenses.
Okay.
Great job. Just so good in so many areas. So Paul Thomas's parents were visiting from Manchester, England, you know, and I was so embarrassed. Like, I have this politically incorrect notion of the quote unquote soccer mom that's changed now, because so many of the moms in current clubs have played.
Exactly.
But back then, I felt like most of the soccer moms just hadn't played. They played maybe a sport, but they hadn't played as much soccer as they have now, right? We put out some good generations of really, really good players. But the way Paul Thomas's mom was talking about the tactics of the game while we were watching, I was like, Paul saw my face. He's looking at me teasingly, like thinking, you muppet. He goes, Z, my parents met. They met at a Man City game. Like that's culture. But she was so switched on. It was really just so impressive. So Paul is a product of that culture.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Which is generational, So that's when I started to kind of, those moments, really kind of take away my ignorance in real small strokes and like, oh man, I never thought about that. Because at that time, I had never been to Europe at that point in my life. So it was really profound, where it's like, hey, that you can't dismiss culture,
How many spots have you been to go and do some coaching education? And so you've been to Argentina and Ghana and France
Brazil,
and Ajax.
Gosh, open mouth, insert foot. Argentina, Brazil, the Netherlands, Spain a couple times, France a couple times. I took a trip. Do you remember Derry O'Grady with Crew Alexander? Real good youth academy in England.
Is that when you went to the Liverpool game?
Yep.
At the Cop?
Yep.
That story?
Yeah. We were just going to...
I have a weird memory, man.
It's much sharper than mine. My pencil's not too sharp, but yours is much sharper than mine.
That Cop story is hilarious.
Yeah, we were just going to go kind of silly tourists, taking photos and buy a scarf and watch the game, and ended up in the Cop end. But we were really there. We wanted to see some game. I wanted to see Man U. I wanted to see Liverpool. I wanted to see some games. But we were there to really watch what they did at Crew Alexander with their youth players. So talk about being silly and naive. I'm pulling out a camera, like recording an activity. Two guys come by me. Sir, I need to see that camera. We need to delete that, or I need to take it. I just got beat red. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just here to record the activity for coaching. They're thinking I'm like an agent, like looking to get their players. Right. I'm like, how naive could I be? But you gotta go do that stuff to live it, to learn, to understand. It's not something you could pick up on a website. So, I kind of being the old man in the room here, but like the amount of time I spent. You asked earlier when I got into coaching. I'm a failed goalkeeper who played at Madonna. Pete Alexander coached me, and Rick Larson was assistant, and Shuki came on to coach the goalkeepers. So I really profound sort of mentors, if you will. And at that time, I played 94 and 97. So at that time, they were like, hey, there's not enough goalkeeper trainers. Like, you should start training goalkeepers. And in a stroke of, somebody looking out for me or coincidence, however you think of it, Doug Landefeld and Lars Richters and Dirk Willeford were all back in school at Madonna to get their teaching certificates. Like Doug played at Michigan State, got a degree. Willie played at Oakland, got a degree. Lars played at Yale.
Yeah.
I got a degree. And then some. Could have been running the country. But anyway, they were in the same education classes I was in at Madonna University. So they kind of looked at me a little bit skeptical at first, but we had classes together, and then they're like, hey, what's it like playing, and are you interested in coaching, So I started as kind of a goalkeeper trainer. I don't remember if it was Doug's wife was like, are you the goalie guy? And I'm like, I don't know, I guess so. At JC Park. And I would just train goalkeepers. And it wasn't a transactional thing. It was just trying to find a path, and what I love to do. And kids were eager. Kids wanted to learn, work hard. Coaches were awesome because I was trying to help. So I would train keepers, and they would go out with their teams. Well, instead of getting in my car and going home, because I didn't have anything better to do with my life, I'm going to watch Derek Williford, Willie run a session, and Tim Ernst run a session, and Doug Landefeld run a session, and Lars Victor's run a session. And Rick at that time was with the Wolves as well. I ended up assisting him on a couple teams. Well, the World Wide Web wasn't common, right?
Right, exactly.
I didn't even have an email address. So I was embarrassed to do it out in front of people. So I would just sit in my car and write down all the activities that they did. And so, okay, he worked on flank play. All right, so what activities did he use? How much space? How many players? What were his coaching points? He worked on pressing or counterattack, whatever the topic was. I just created like this notebook, and that was my real learning.
That's your education.
The courses, the licenses were so impactful. The content was impactful, but the instructor was the magic. Like I had Tom Durkin for the B on the A just by chance. And I hung on every word he said, and I just had so much respect for his content knowledge. And he could be gruff, but kind of a smart aleck. And I liked that. That appealed to me. But he was so good. So I don't mean to be dismissive of the licenses, but the real learning for me was outside the courses. It was the hard yards.
Yep.
It was day to day. It was hour by hour, no shortcuts. And I thought that was an investment of my time. I didn't think I was spending my time. I wasn't disinterested. I wasn't frustrated. I was pretty insecure because I played with some really good players. I was not. Here I am at Livonia Churchill. Jeff Kassar's 2 years ahead of me, went on to play in the MLS, goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Cal Kalashevsky was 1 year ahead of me. Could have went to Stanford. He's a brilliant mind. Went to UAD, played with a bunch of the Barda guys, but I think he's in their Hall of Fame. They won their conference. Cal was really, really, really good. Could have been a pro. But they also had like Jeff Tom. They had great players at UAD at that time, and Mo had it rolling. But so I'm at the same high school as these kids. Mike Gentili, Jeff Kassar, Scott Lamphere. MLS was just starting out. So there's a lot of college kids that were going late. We had 3 kids from the high school I went to all later on went to the MLS. Travis Rueda, Livonia Stevenson, Mike Gentili, Lamphere. They won a national championship with Jim Launder and Ian Barker at University of Wisconsin. So to get these 4 guys from the same town drafted in the MLS, I grew up playing with those guys. Not that I was anywhere near those guys, but Jeff Kassar would call, we had telephones on the wall, call the house. Just wanted a sparring partner, just wanted to train. Even when I was in college, I can remember he was at Florida International. I was starting Madonna. I had done a workout earlier in the day, and Livonia YMCA at the time was like I could walk there. A lot of my childhood was spent there, goofing around, playing basketball and stuff. So Jeff Kassar was like, hey, I want to do a workout, come maybe at Livonia YMCA. And I had already done a workout, but I never wanted to tell him no. He was like so good and so driven. And he wasn't hard on me. He was super supportive. He was really hard on himself. Really, 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 really driven. I'd already done a workout. He's like, no, let's go work out. I didn't want to tell him I already worked out. So I'm like, I guess I'm going to work out again. I'm like jogging on the treadmill. He's running a few minutes late. He just reached over and put my treadmill on 10 miles an hour and put his own, because we're doing 2 miles, and I'm like, oh man. Then like after 1 mile, I'm like, hey Jeff, I actually worked out earlier. He's no, we're finishing this workout. And I'm just like, felt like I was running for dear life. So I'm a product of that environment. We also played a lot of street hockey and basketball and home run derby. Jeff was an unbelievable tennis player and really good basketball player as well. I remember I knew I wasn't good enough as a goalkeeper. I wasn't quick enough. I understood the game really well. I managed a lot before things happened. Physically, I wasn't awful, but I was just dead nuts average. And those guys were special athletically. And Jeff told me, I still say this to goalkeepers when they ask me about what they should do outside of goalkeeper training. He said, play as much tennis as you can and as much basketball as you can. Even though you're not, you might be a perimeter guy, get low, work on your rebounding, work on your body, box out, You gotta get dirty in there and work on your vertical, work on your timing. You got to manage your box. And then I kind of was like a dog watching TV when he said tennis. I kind of turned my head a little bit, And he goes, well, Mark, think about the 18 box. Think about coming off your line. They play a through ball over the top. You might go clear out the 18 with your feet. It's not all shot stopping.
Yeah.
And your movement side to side, approaching the net. And he said, hey, you're a pretty nice guy. You always want to be a good teammate. He goes, in tennis, it's all just you.
Yeah.
You got to be accountable to you. You got to do something individually, So I would, some of my buddies were on the tennis team. So I would call them. I'm like, hey, can I just get a workout? I wasn't beating them in tennis, I can assure you. I was just trying not to embarrass myself. But I would be a good enough sparring partner to entertain them, to kind of challenge them a little bit. So they were willing to do it, So I did that quite a bit, But that was his advice. I ended up playing at Madonna because it was local, and they were just starting the program. I was graduating high school in 94, and Madonna, 94 was the first year we had a men's soccer program. So a lot of the guys I went to school with, buddies, were not sure. Do we go and serve in the U.S. military? Do we go to Schoolcraft College? Some guys are going to Michigan State. Some guys are going to Western. We just didn't know. And like, hey, Madonna's having a team. So a handful of us were like, yeah, let's go check it out, a local school, and see if we can keep playing. So it was just kind of born from there. So I played 94 to 97. And I'll bet you I started coaching goalkeepers 95 or 96, So I can remember our back over Jim Launder saying, it takes 30 years to learn the craft. And I'm approaching, we're in 2026, right? So if I'm 95 or 96.
He said that?
We're pro. I'm a slow learner, so I'm going to need another 30.
I get it, though.
Figure it out.
Do you feel that that's true?
Well, I do feel like there's a balance of enthusiasm and passion and being closer to the age group that you're coaching, like a peer relationship.
Yeah.
There's something, I remember Mike Ruddy saying, I was really young coaching them without women. He said, hey, you can get a lot accomplished because you're so close in age. You can be among them. He didn't say it that way. That's the way I think of it. He goes, as you get older, it gets a little bit harder to relate to players. So there's a trade-off of being perceived to be a peer versus more of like an adult figure. And I don't know about an authority figure, but kind of viewed more as a parent.
Right.
But there's a trade-off in experience where there were no shortcuts. We have scars, wins and losses. The scars are beautiful. It's part of our story. And, we should celebrate them, not be embarrassed by them. But that's how you've been in the game,
You talked about feeling like an imposter when you started out.
Yeah.
So did I, man.
Yeah.
I think that we go through stages where I think that at first we feel like we don't know anything.
Yeah.
Then something changes and we think we know everything. And then in the later stages, maybe that's that 30-year stage, is that we realize that it literally takes a village.
Yeah.
That it has different impacts
For sure.
and we don't know the way. And there's multiple ways.
Yeah. Have you, I don't read as much as I used to. I'm embarrassed. I listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks. I don't know if I'm busier or I'm lazier. Feel busier. Called The Second Mountain.
No.
It's a really important book for me. I took the DOC license, actually. It's now renamed the Technical Leadership.
Okay.
Kind of therapeutic. I didn't know this at the time. When I signed up for it, we're rolling up the sidewalk on the rush and going to work for the Jags in a coaching ed specific role. So I had signed up for the DOC license, thinking, man, I've been a director. I had an opportunity at a pretty young age, had some, good decisions. I've certainly made some poor ones based on information I had at the time, whatever, the lens we looked through. So the DOC license, I just took it, a few years ago, 3 years ago, and it's been renamed. But it's sort of therapeutic because I was sort of at the end of a tenure of trying to run a club for over 20 years, and it's really powerful in terms of when we make decisions, when we're moving, you've recently, we're talking about the individual small group training and now the podcast stuff. what do you run from and what do you run to when we make these types of life decisions?
Yeah.
Whether it's relationships or our craft or, every path has a heart, and you take it till it ends, and then another door opens. So you find your new path. So I was taking this DOC license, which is for aspiring directors who are going to run clubs and current directors. And I was
On the way out.
I was rolling up the sidewalk. But it was really powerful in terms of being able to look back, and really look in the mirror. So I felt like so many times running the club, I'm in a New York subway, things are just flying by, coaching teams, parents, board, coaches, the other coaches, players at every age. Are we hitting the standards? I mean, it's just fields, referees. It's just all encompassing, unless you live it, all the work that's required off the field, hard to quantify. I can remember a parent who was super cool. I was at the Rusty Bucket with some coaches in Plymouth, right by NCP in Northville. And he had a couple drinks in him. He was some buddies. And we're going to have a coaches meeting with just the directors. After training one weeknight, we were like, let's get dinner and then open up our laptops and whatever. And he made some sort of smart aleck comment. He was super cool. He wasn't like passive aggressive or anything, but he's like, what do you guys, you're not going home, huh? You guys over here having a couple beers or something? Well, actually, we're going to have dinner and have a meeting. And he kind of laughed and let it roll off his shoulder and walked on. And then he's sitting like a couple tables over with some guys, some of his friends. And they're trying to kick us out and we're still on our computers, And he goes, hey, I just want to apologize. I didn't realize like how much you guys put into this when you're not on the field coaching, And the guy grew up playing. He was a pretty good basketball player, It was real high-end job in the automotive industry, and it just, unless you live it, it's hard to quantify it. I can remember I was at NCP on a Friday night, 8:00 game, and pouring rain. And the kids were like juniors or seniors in high school. And there was no necessary reason for me on a Friday night to be standing and watching that game. I wasn't like having a parent meeting. There wasn't anything for me to do other than to watch players and support the coach. So halftime I walk around the field. I'm going to use a restroom, and one of the soccer moms going to the bathroom. She'd known me for 10 years, not well, but just parent in the club. It's like, Z, what in the hell are you doing out here? You don't have anything in your life that you should be doing. You'd rather be doing standing here watching my kid play in the rain. Like, we don't want to be at this game. Why are you here? And you just get so locked in, you just don't see the big picture if you're really just pouring yourself into it.
When you felt like you were going to be an imposter to running a club, like what was that transition like?
Hard, yeah. Beat myself up a lot. I still do probably. The way that I kind of justified it was like, the story that I told myself was, I need to put more time in than anyone else. I need to study harder. I need to travel and experience this. So people who've lived it, where it's in their culture. The only way I felt like I would be able to do a worthy sort of job, if you will, was in what I thought was sort of outworking others. Mm-hmm. Because as a player, I had to outwork others just to play around good play. There's a lot of other guys I played with who were so much better. They worked hard, but a lot of it was easier for them. It came more naturally. So that I think I applied that to my work in coaching in the game. And we're trying to run a club was I just told myself a story that I had to outwork everyone else or it wouldn't work. And nobody said that to the board I was answering. Nobody said that to me. I told myself that. And that was the way that I thought I could sort of be of service. I started talking about the second mountain. So the first mountain we tend to want to get the title, financial security, stability, kind of make our name, if you will. The second mountain is more like that's maybe less important, but it's more about value. What value am I offering? How can I contribute? How can I give back? How can I leave it better than I found it? So I think, I don't know about all, but I think most of us kind of go through that kind of a trajectory in our work and relationships. You know, our personal finances, is this sustainable? You know, so. The second mountain, yeah, really helped me. I used it in my DOC license presentation, you know, a lot of excerpts from that book, because it spoke really clearly to me about my own life. So, yeah, I thought it was good.
I mean, and then you talk about, I mean, I love talking to you. I mean, it's been a while. I mean, we talked a little bit at the expo last year.
Yeah.
Because that's when
I was running around chasing my tail. I'm excited for the expo this year because it's what I love about the expo. There's no club colors. It's not college or high school or club. It's just like, can we all get better at our craft? You know, and I'm 49. I still got excited this year to go to the United Soccer Coaches Convention in Philly, because it's like I get to listen to all these different presenters and pick which field session I'm going to, or this tactical coach, or that periodization, or that mental health, and just there's such a broad bandwidth of topics, and I feel like I need to get better at all of them. Right. So the idea of the cultural architect, Paul Tinian, is like, and I think a lot of us, quite frankly, not to take any credit away from him, have had this vision of, it'd be great to do that in Michigan.
Yeah, because we were the Michigan Mafia.
You know, but, you know, that requires time, resources. Like, I'm not brave enough to get over that finish line, you know, like that's a tipping point moment to take on that kind of a project. So I admire him in a lot of ways, but that's one specific one. So when Paul started talking about it, I'm like, hey, I'd love to help. I love going to conventions. I'm about coaching ed. The licenses are critical, but a lot of learning's going on outside courses, right?
Right.
So to bring people in who don't have to fly and get a hotel, more local Midwest coaching community, it's more accessible. I'd love to be a part of it, help. And then we started having some meetings and kicking it around a little bit. And I'm like, hey, man, I don't know him that well, but I have such a tremendous amount of respect for him, and I've known him for a long time. Ian Barker used to run the convention. Mm-hmm. You know, why don't we see if, I know he's, you know, semi-retired. He still does work for U.S. Soccer, and he's still club consulting. He still is in the game. But he might be interested in this, you know. I can get his number. Do you want me to call him? Paul's like, oh, for sure. Yeah, I'd love to have Ian involved. So I talked with Ian, you know, and I said, hey, I don't know, you know, what the economics are. I'm just in the coaching ed space, but you're the number one guy to help us lead this, you know, if you're interested and available. And he has a tremendous amount of respect for an admin. A&G used to work in tandem, I think, running the conventions. Mm-hmm. She's like really sharp in all the logistics, all the details, soccer specific, and then just the general stuff that people like me don't think about. What about the hotels? Who's doing registration? Who's the concierge for all the, you know, presenters? You know, like all the logistics behind it. I'm the Muppet looking to sharpen my pencil and take notes from the presenters, you know, and learn. But to run something like that, I mean, you talk about takes a village, and then some. So Paul's flying the plane, and I admire that because it's not an economic, you know, that's not the incentive. It's about bringing people in the game to get a little bit better, you know, without having to necessarily get in a plane and pay hotels for a week at the convention. Philadelphia next year, it's in Kansas City. Not everybody can do that. So Ian is like the technical lead. I'm just supporting him a bit, but I'm excited about it. It's awesome. Last year was year one. We got started late, and but the content was great.
Yeah,
content was great, and we meet once or twice a week, putting a schedule together now, and it's going to be sweet, man. I'm always thinking like, would I want to listen to this person? Would I want to watch this person's field session? And the best problem to have is when there's 3 or 4 things booked at the same time, and I got to make a decision of which one I'm going to go see. And we're going to have that problem. It's amazing to me in the coaching community how many are not talking about leaving it better than they found it. They're living it. There's so many people coming to present that are only doing it to share what they have. There's no big, if we start getting 10,000 coaches, we'll talk about a budget. But right now it's all grassroots. Like, hey, you want to come in and help us out? We're trying to build this event. Right. And the only no's are people have prior conflicts.
Of course.
If they're available, they're in.
Right.
It's awesome.
I just had Dave Diani on.
Oh, man.
And
cool.
We started talking about the expo, and I'm like, are you coming? And he's like, I'm going to try, but their preseason is starting in mid-July now.
Yeah.
So
what a cool dude, man.
He's great.
He's awesome.
I never met him before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just have a little bit of a connection to him because Spring Arbor and Madonna were sort of lost souls of the NAIA.
I mean,
the Muppets. But he was a good player, and there's a lot of good players in the NAIA. Actually, he was good, but he was always just so salt of the earth.
Yeah, he's great.
Credit his parents and his upbringing. We connected a lot through ODP, like just a mutual kinship, respect, camaraderie type thing, brotherhood, if you will, and. There was a time when he was at Grand Valley, there was I think just over 20% of his roster were girls from Northville, that had come through our club, and he just out of nowhere, it's just so profound to me. Just out of nowhere sent a text. They had won a national championship, and it was 2-3 months. He goes, "Hey man, thank you for everything you did, working with these players." So it was cool. He didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Some really cool families, had a lot of good success there. And I was Division II, so to speak, in terms of status, but I'm like, hey, in every way, this is an elite program. And if I had kids, I would want my kids playing for Dave. Not to disparage anyone else, but
of course,
his soft skills, his values, and the way he coaches, his content knowledge, his experience, I think Haas has done such a great job at Michigan State, man, and Lou at Western. I mean, the Broncos are just flying over there. But Dave at Michigan, there's so many good coaches.
It's crazy. Do you think
we're spoiled?
Okay, first of all, are you presenting at the expo?
I think so. I'm telling Ian that I'm Plan B or Plan Z, depending on how many other. I'd rather listen than talk.
Of course.
They asked me to present last year, and it was kind of a little bit of a capstone of the deal. You see, like running a club.
Right.
I presented that, which I thought had value for coaches who were interested in that. So I felt good about that. We've talked about some topics. I just said, hey, a lot of these coaches locally have access to me through MSYSA or club, or I get texts and calls like, hey, can you talk on the phone, or can you come watch my training, or can we do a Zoom meeting and just here's what's going on with my team. So I'm pretty accessible, if you will, for that. But a lot of these other guys that are coming in from Plains, I'm like, let's make them the priority because we don't get to see them often.
It's true.
Or ever. Let's make these other guys the priority. Erwin connected the Muhlenstein method. Renee Muhlenstein's talk. He's not.
Is Renee coming?
Not confirmed yet, but if he's available, he will. I think it's going to happen, but he's in the World Cup, so he's got some other things. Got some other things on his plate.
Yeah.
But schedule permitting. Yeah. So to have Erwin connected to Renee really helps, and he wants to give back. I asked Erwin, I'm like, hey, the budget's pretty modest. To rent what was the Suburban Showplace, I don't know the numbers, but I'm like, it's a monster.
It's got to be.
This isn't about transaction. This is about what's good for the game and making better coaches. So, and he's like, no, Renee's on board. He's in, if he's available. So, we're waiting for confirmation. He's spinning some different plates.
That'd
One
be
of those
awesome.
being coaching in the World Cup. So, pending his availability, he's going to go. But we got it. I'm excited.
Is Vermees coming back?
We were able to bring him into Michigan for a club event.
Scobie was telling me about that.
And it was just, the only problem is it ended. You know what I'm saying? That was the only problem, is the day had to end.
Yeah.
I mean, just guy was gold. And just salt of the earth, man. Just, hey, how can I help you guys? What do you have questions about? And just on the spot. Like, I'm not good on the front foot. You know, like I'm on the back foot. It takes me a while to take a question, listen, circle back. I mean, even doing this, you know. He was just so sharp on the front foot. Whatever anyone asked, and on the field, it was magic. I mean, he was special. The only problem with it is it had to end, you know.
Was that like you're doing, Paul?
Actually, no, I was organizing kind of a summit coaching ed.
Okay.
But I was like so nervous.
Just for all Jags staff, all the locations come to Novi or Wixom. And
some internal stuff. Most of the work that I do is specific to working with that coach and his or her environment on that day in real time. This is, you know, because if you have a meeting, I worked in Northfield for a long time. Now Eric Wedland runs Northfield. Well, Eric Wedland and Jeff Shook can use a different message than someone in the junior academy, a Madonna men's soccer player who's in his first season of coaching that's cutting his teeth. So to have one meeting for such a broad range of coaching experience is a difficult fit when you want to honor everyone's time. Like, I'm investing am I making the most out of their time?
Right.
Or are we just punching the box, having a meeting to have a meeting? So most of my work is with individual coaches in their environment, in the real world that they're kind of living with their team. You know, parent expectations, player development versus team development, where they're at, how are they feeling in their own journey, honoring them. You know, I appreciate your work, man. You're doing good work. I really like this, and this. And next time, what do you think about this? How did that go? What's a different way we could approach it? And just trying to troubleshoot and problem solve with them. Not talk at them, but work with them.
Yeah.
I think is really important for their growth, and that hopefully translates to the players, you know. But the summit, we don't do as often, but we wanted to bring in a heavy hitter, and several college coaches who had said, yeah, I'll do it. They were in the throes of their spring season.
Yeah. And
the weather, and so they were canceling some sessions and rescheduling. So a couple of people I thought we had in the bag pulled out. So Jason Davis, who's awesome and is really, you know, he's cut his teeth in the game, but he's also done really well working for Adidas.
Yep.
You know, he had his son Jay, one of his sons plays at University of Michigan.
Yep.
The other one plays at Sporting KC. So he developed a really good rapport with Peter, professionally as well as personally. I think more so after Peter had his tenure ended at Sporting KC, because he was a parent, right? But after he was done coaching, he and Jason, I think, got a lot closer.
Yeah.
On more of a personal level. They always got along, but Peter, I think, felt like he could open up more. So Paul and Jason called in the favorite of Peter through Adidas, like, hey, can you help this guy come in as one of his appearance fees or whatever, however they work that out. Beyond my pay grade. Which is most things. But he was awesome. He was awesome. And you can tell when people feel like they're spending their time, like they're there because they have to. And he wanted to. And that was what I think really had a big impact. And he wasn't talking at us in any way of like, here's how I built my youth club. Here's how I ran Sporting KC. Here's how I matured as a coach. Here's my trajectory. It was all, hey, what do you guys want to know? Right? You all have other things you could be doing. Right. We're here at this summit. I need to help you. You know? And he lived it. You know, so cool.
I mean, so now, does any other club have a coaching director? Or like a coaching education director?
Yeah, I don't know that. I talked to Ian Mullen. Do you know Mullen?
Yeah.
He's kind of running
through Region 2.
Yeah. So
that's when I was with like Paul and Bob.
Got it. Yeah. So he was in Illinois for a long time, went to Massachusetts. He's just got an incredible brain for the game. He's got a leadership role within U.S. Soccer Coaching Ed.
Okay.
And I think he's the one that got Ian kind of more back involved with U.S. soccer and coaching as well. And Ian's been doing it forever. But Molly, I asked him that question, and he goes, I'm not aware of anyone else that's their specific role. There's other directors. It's so easy for any board or anyone who's running a club to add on a line item in their job description of,
right.
Oh yeah, you also have to check in with the coaches in your age group, but you also have to coach 3 teams, and you also have to do this, and you also have to do that. And at some point, the quality suffers because
something
the quantity,
suffers.
So it's part transformation and part transaction. Where do you find that balance of, are you supporting people to do the job really well? And Paul, I don't think he knew the nuances of the relationship I had with the board in Northville. I always admired the work of the Rush. Tim Schultz is a very, very powerful figure in my life in the game. And Arian Hoxa, who now runs Hawaii Rush, but he's an original Colorado Rush guy.
Mm-hmm.
The Rush was great. I was really not on the same page with the Northville board, and everything kind of went locally through the Northville board. So the relationship was really kind of wasn't really like a franchise, like a McDonald's, where you have to do everything that Colorado does. It was like, hey, we want to help give you resources to make Michigan good. So the Rush was great, for A to Z, from beginning to end. And it was a hard phone call to make, to talk to Tim and Ari and to thank them for everything, personally and professionally, for all their support. And it's a really good camaraderie with those guys. I learned a lot and really value their relationships very deeply, and really helped me along in my coaching journey and certainly running a club. But yeah, the Northville board was not seeing the development of the club the same way I was. What I call the Tree Fort Leagues, and thought we did a really good job developing some players. But the Northville community is a very professional, successful community. A lot of dual income. They want the best for their kids, and there's a lot that really invested in our process of what we're doing with our players and teams. But it was becoming more common that they felt there was a ceiling. Well, our team's good, we're happy, and coach is good, but we're not in the right league. So we're not going to get the right opportunities to play college soccer or whatever. And the parents, at the end of the day, I think there were some parents with misaligned expectations, but for the most part, the parents were old souls who wanted the best for their kids.
Of course.
And they're like, they didn't say it this way, but the way I interpreted it was, if my kid doesn't play at Michigan or Michigan State, I'm okay with that. It's no problem. But as my mom would say, I don't want the Catholic guilt that I didn't do enough to give them that opportunity. I want to do everything I can to give them that opportunity. And if it doesn't work out for any reason, if they don't want to do it or they're not good at whatever, I love them no less. Still my kid. I just want to provide everything I can. So we started just losing quality players, over time to the different Tree Fort leagues, if you will. And when the DA, before MLS Next, when the DA, I said to the board, I'm like, if we don't raise the standards, like our coaching and licenses, all that was good, but if we don't raise our standards, we can apply to the DA, but we'll never get in, And they just didn't share the same vision for trying to, sort of toe that line.
Right.
They weren't interested in trying to please the gatekeepers to get in a certain league. And I admire, the community approach to it. I always wanted to remain connected to a community.
Right.
I just felt that was very powerful. The most important people in the club, it wasn't me, and at the risk of throwing someone from glass house, it wasn't our coaches who were great. And we had a great staff for a long time. Unbelievable. I mean, Chris Grass, at Marshall, Snapey at Butler at the time. I mean, it was special. I learned so much from the people I worked with. But the real glue to the club were what I call inappropriately the power parents, team managers. Each team had a treasurer. Like, they really gave direction to the club because they were among them. They're talking to all the other parents. No, this is what we're doing and this is why, and they got the buy-in, You know, it's not exactly like I'm Captain Charisma. You know what I mean? So it's about parents talking to parents, agreeing. To, yeah, we're all in. Let's do this. You know, so they were the true glue of the club. You know, and they just wanted to help. You know, it wasn't a transactional thing. Yeah, I'll manage the team and take care of the pass guards and kind of keep the other parents, you know, off the referee, you know, that type of stuff. So, you know, it was a really powerful time, and I was very, very, very fortunate to be able to serve. But yeah, it got to the point where, like, I don't know the truth of the matter. I never saw the financials. I was an independent contractor. People always thought that and still think I live in Northville. You know, think, hey man, I live in Redford. Yeah, I'm
same house.
Starter house can be my retirement house. You know? But because I was in Northville for so long, I think people sort of just kind of associate that. But the board, they you know, they weren't short money. You know, and it got to the point where I had a personal, I would say VO, as a VO camera. I used at Madonna with the men, and any home game that I could get to in the club, I'd record games for them, you know, send a video to that coach and manager. And I'm like, well, we should have like 4 or 5, you know. It got to the point where there were a couple teams in the soccer tourism going to play in like Chicago or St. Louis, and they wanted to take my camera. And I'm thinking like, I'm taking this camera back to my 1,000 square foot in Redford, and I bought myself like, why am I, you know, we don't have enough money to buy a couple cameras, you know, in Northville, Michigan for
right.
families.
Exactly.
Like we weren't the most expensive club or even close, but it wasn't free. Like the club's got to have some money,
right?
You know. And I asked the president and the treasurer, and they both just politely said no. And the president goes, no, he's like, well, you have one, don't you? I've seen you bring one out to the field. I go, well, yeah, but I only have one. People are pissed at me because I'm not giving them mine to take to St. Louis.
30 teams.
You know? And he just he goes, no, just let them use yours or tell them that they can't use it. So I'm like the bad guy, you know? I'm like, this isn't right, you know? So, and there were a couple other things that I would say the final straw, but I just felt like I wasn't, that not only me, but our staff and our families weren't getting the support that they should get, you know. So I just some parents approached me. The parents of the younger ages didn't know me as well, and they thought maybe if we make a change, it was a little bit more transactional. But the truth was, it was about wanting to work with people I really enjoy being around, can learn from, share the game with, and what's best for our families. And whether I like the current state of soccer or not, I can't change the reality.
Right.
So it was like, all right, well, who do you kind of partner with? And I put the word out to the trusted staff who stayed really loyal. Like, hey, I'm thinking we might need to make a change. So the word started to get out. Some parents approached me about, really, for lack of a better way to describe it, trying to do a coup d'etat. You know, I'm like, well, let's change the board, this and that. I'm like, nah, I don't. Hey, listen, those guys are loyal to me for a while. I've spent over 20 years, man. I put in some hard yards. I'm not looking to destroy anything. I'm looking to try to be in an environment where there's more support, you know, and I haven't been able to delegate up well enough to get that support. You know, the answers are polite but pretty firm no. So I started to, it was weird how fast it spread, you know, and then I don't want to play the Dutch name game, but other clubs start kind of calling, hey, we heard you know, you've never been open to other work. What are you thinking about doing? What are you going to do with the club? This and that. It was very important for me to honor each branch. We had Northville and Downriver, which is my original sort of commitment. And really, like, at the risk of sounding like arrogant, you know, like really proud of the Downriver branch.
Yeah.
Coaches of players, just the values in the community. Like, some good players, man, came out of there. And when I first went down there, I was just poor man coaching ed guy. They would have me go down there once a season, one fall, one spring, to work with their coaches. And then they would take me out to Applebee's. You know, that was the trade. Yeah, thanks for coming. Go back to Redford. Yeah. But I enjoyed it. You know, yeah, side. You know. So I said, look, we're going to join the rush, you know. coming out of Northville soccer, and they were like offended. Like, why would you drop the Northville name? Like, it's a great community. Like, we would never. We're downriver. You know, there's 12 community. We're together. Like, we would never take on another brand. I said, well, the Rush can provide this, this, and this. I think it's better for our coaches. I think it's most importantly better for our players. And we have kind of a fraternity effect, sorority, this shared sort of brotherhood, this ecosystem to share players, share coaching information, how to run a club. Like, I just think it's better. By the time I got done my ranting and raving, getting paid by the word in Applebee's, they were like, hey, can we join? You know? And I wasn't trying to sell. I was just saying what I feel.
Just being yourself.
Yeah, like, this is what I believe in. You know, I may change my mind. So I was turned on to the Rush by Donnie Gemmel, who really looked out for me and really gave me an early start coaching at ODP when that was the only pathway, and in coaching education.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to assist Bob Bakari at a gym. It's called the Hawk. It used to be Farmington Harrison High School in the winter. I used the term. He was upset. You know Bob well enough. He was upset. I mean, the guy's the OG, man.
Absolutely.
The guy's the OG, him and Paul. So he was upset, and I didn't know this because I'm not intuitive, that we came back from lunch and a bunch of the D-licensed candidates, now called student coaches, were playing basketball in the gym with soccer balls.
Uh-oh.
And smoke started coming out of his ears, but I didn't see it because I'm a Muppet. I didn't know. I'm just like, oh, yeah. And I remember him saying, hey, Zath, why the hell is everybody playing basketball as a soccer coach? You know? And I go, I just got back from lunch. They're bored. Yeah, whatever syllables I vomited out of my mouth. But I didn't notice how upset he was because he always treated me like gold. You know, I mean, he was so awesome. So, and he really believed I wanted to get better. And I knew I didn't think I was good enough. So he was really like helping, you know. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like a tough love. It was like, no, I don't think you belong here. You know, like, yeah, let me help you out in terms of being an instructor, you know. So later in the day, I made them talk about open mouth insert foot. I made the mistake of saying he wanted me to start organizing. I wasn't giving coaches feedback yet, just how to structure a course. So I said, hey, the next coach that's on deck, we don't want you to play so you can get ready for your session. And he threw his clipboard at me and papers just went everywhere. I mean, time just stopped. Everyone just stopped. And he kind of, at the end, had a bit of a smirk. It was a bit of theater. But he made his point. He goes, if I hear or see any more non-soccer behavior or words on this course, you will not pass, and you will be asked to leave. You know, he pointed right at me, and I was like, oh, my God. One of those moments you remember.
He always had, like, he
kind of smirked at the end. Like, he's like that. Tom Durkin was like that, too.
It was like,
and he's like, I just wanted to make my point.
What are you up to? Like, so he always had like a purpose of everything that he did or everything that he said. And like, I remember when I was coaching at Country Day with him and we were in the state playoffs. I think it was the year that we won a championship. And one of the kids like lost a mark and the kid scored a goal. So the next day, when they all show up to training, Bob Bakari goes and walks next to that kid. Well, the kid gets up and like starts walking over there. Bob stays with him the whole time.
Okay.
And then the kid walks this way. And then he's just walking and he's just shadowing this kid this entire time. And I go to his son, Brett was playing at the time, and he goes, oh, he has a purpose for everything he's doing. I have no idea what he's doing, but he has a purpose. And then he just got the whole team together. He goes, that's how you don't lose a mark. And it was like, just brilliant. And it's just like little stuff like that he would do. It's just hilarious.
Well, even now in coaching ed, you know, I was talking to a coach the other night. I go, don't tell them, you got to show them. Kids are so visual now. Yeah. And here's Bob doing that, you know.
15 years ago, 17 years ago.
So, mastering his method, man.
What are you doing with the state? You're the technical director?
Yeah, so Paul and I kind of share the role. I think Tom Farrell's pretty sharp and has done a great job, you know, managing, you know, as executive director for such a long time. And So Donnie Gelman was there. He left to go do Texas Rush. I was finishing a master's and coaching a Madonna women's team. I had promised all these girls I was going to coach them. So I'm like, I can't go to Texas to do this Rush thing. And he's like, well, why don't you bring it to Michigan? That's how the Rush thing got going. And then, so I served the Rush for a long time, but back to the state, Donnie left. And then I don't remember if Brett Jacobs was before Brian Thorpe or Brian Thorpe was before Brett Jacobs.
I think Jacobs was first.
But they were like, I called it like the least card job, like 3 years, like turning it over, you know?
Yeah.
I can remember a couple people asking me, and that was a high profile job at the time. Like they'd have a meeting in the state office, all the club directors would go, and, you know, it was like a job you would want to get, you know, if you're young and cutting your teeth. Like it was a really impactful role. And I'm thinking like, I don't want that job. Like these, after 3 years, you get turned away. And I didn't know the method behind the madness, whether they wanted to leave or it wasn't working out. You know, Renus Mickles, I think in that book, Team Building, Coach of the Centuries, was like, you need to have the technical, the political, and the admin all right, or it doesn't work. So that interface at a state association, what's the responsibility of the technical director, the politics of the day, and then the admin, like if all that's not jiving, it gets pretty strenuous, and there's some friction. So I would kind of just tell Tom and the leadership, the board, like I'm happy to be the substitute teacher and help out. I'm not willing to leave my other work because I don't trust
that I'd be here.
Yeah, not with any one
Not-
person, but just the
right.
politics of the day.
Yeah.
You know, the directors I felt like had a target on their back because you can't be all things to all people. And there's elections, right? So it's hard to serve that many masters sometimes. So I was always one to help and super loyal, and they've been loyal. So after we went through a few different technical directors in this sort of modern era, I'll say, for lack of a better way to describe it, Paul had left us in the Rush. It was sort of during the time like the auto bailout and real estate bubble bursting, 08, 09. His wife's in the automotive. Sarah's awesome. She played and coached with us for a while. Played at Northwood. She's great for the game. Her mentor tapped her on the shoulder. The automotive industry shakeup. She's like, hey, I don't know if you're going to make it. You've done a great job, but I don't know if your role's going to be here through this auto bailout. So they moved to Chicago. And Sarah's family's from Metro Detroit, so they wanted to come back. They started a family, and I don't know the vetting process at the time, but Paul Thomas was not being considered for the state job, and he was interested. Selfishly, I wanted to have him back with us in the Rush.
All right.
Great guy, top coach, like he'd be great for the club, but I wanted to, honor him, great guy. I didn't want to burn a relationship. So he said, hey, for my family, the hard yards of the club, every night, every weekend, I'm more interested in the state job. Do you think you could, mention my name? So I reached out to Sohail, the president at the time, and said, listen, I don't know who's applied. I'm not on the committee. I'm not involved. I'm not trying to overstep my boundaries. But if you're not considered Paul Thomas, you're missing out, And we got along really well, Sohail and I. And I don't know how much he valued my opinion. I don't know how much impact I had, but Paul ended up getting the role, which wasn't good for the club.
Because you couldn't get him at Rush.
But it was good for him. And then Paul really rose up the ranks so fast in U.S. soccer and coaching ed. He teaches a lot of B licenses now. And he's very humble about it, but he's really highly respected and well thought of. He's a great guy. Everybody gets along with him. So Paul wanted to leave the state director role and get back on the club game. Because I don't know this to be true, but I think some people that were guiding him in his professional pathway said, hey, you got to be in the USDA. You got to, college isn't high school. You got to be making players, at the top youth level to be taken serious, so to speak. I'm talking out of turn a little bit on that, but I think he got that type of a message. Mm-hmm. And Paul doesn't like to sit still. He's a Manchester boy, man. He's a worker. He's a grinder. He's very charismatic, but he's a grinder. And the state job is a little bit different pace. So it's not like being in a club. So he wanted to get back in the club, So I talked to Tom and I said, listen, the state director role, I don't want to throw stones from a glass house or come across super judgmental, but the state director role is not what it once was. The club directors have direct access to what they're doing with each league, with the state association. The state technical director used to be sort of a authority figure or guide for all the club directors, if you will. It was more hierarchical. Now that's not necessarily the case. So I just said, Paul wants to get back and coach. You've had these other technical directors. They don't coach a lot. All these coaches want to coach. I'm not going to leave the work I'm doing. I would like to do the job. I don't know how well I would do it, but I'm not going to risk leaving all my other work to take the job.
Right.
Because the next election cycle, I might get turned over. Because I know one thing, I'm going to upset somebody. I'm going to piss somebody off, something I say. Try to make them all happy, none are happy, Like I'm going to say something that I shouldn't say at some point. Trust me. I know that. So I said, if you want Paul and I to kind of split the role, and the Rush was not at the time this elite club that had all the top players. So for me to be involved more with ODP wasn't driving other club directors to not send their kids to ODP. I wasn't a controversial figure. And the staff that worked in ODP knew firsthand, like, no, he's cut a lot of kids that were on the bubble that played there's no free pass, So fortunately, the staff kind of spoke on my behalf to kind of calm any concerns among parents. Will think whatever parents think, but the other club directors and the others that were kind of influential, I wasn't perceived to be controversial. And I was already on the coaching ed staff.
Right.
So,
forever.
Yeah, and it was like, hey, if Paul wants to work, he went to the Wolves. They had a USDA at the time. And at the time, Wolves and Hawks were together. I think he was specifically coaching with the Wolves.
Yep.
But he was the lead in coaching ed, and I was sort of the lead in ODP. But we kind of helped each other out throughout, still do. So now a lot of other state associations have Tom was a bit of a trailblazer in that way. A lot of other state associations have kind of reformatted that role of a technical director or director of coaching to allow those guys and men and women to coach as well as work for the state. I think the state's thinking at some point in the land of transactions and their budgets, all right, well, if he's working somewhere else, we're asking him to do less, but we can also pay him less. Let's just pay for what we're getting. He can go work. If he wants to have 3 jobs, that's his problem. Let him do that to himself. So that's kind of how it sort of unfolded. It wasn't planned in any way. And I just said, hey, let's take it for a test drive, And for security reasons, I won't quit all my other work to take this risk.
Right.
And if you think politically it's not working out, you can tell me,
Right.
But, you don't need to be the substitute teacher anymore. We'll hire somebody else, no problem. So I appreciate, Tom's been a tremendous steward, Tom Farrell, for the state association and has a lot of support. There's challenges.
Yeah.
There's challenges. I really felt for him during COVID. The amount of pressure, insurance, we couldn't play soccer, and all the club leaders. I felt a ton of stress. The Northville community was incredibly respectful during that time. The board was really good about not charging families, which really helped. But I felt for our coaches. That was a scary time. And Tom was feeling the weight of it, for the whole state association.
Yeah.
And his hands were tied. It wasn't even his decision to make. No offense to Tom or anybody else. The kids weren't allowed to train together.
Yeah.
So, but it was incredibly stressful. Yeah, I felt we aged in dog years. We aged in dog years during that time for sure. It was hard.
What did you guys do for your staff during COVID?
Well, I'll tell you what. I sheepishly appealed That's how one of the treasures of the Northville community. I sheepishly appealed to what I call the power parents, team managers. We had treasurers for each team helping like tournaments and stuff. I said, hey, listen, the board has made it. I don't know why I was the one having all the meetings, but anyway, some things are probably left best unsaid. Anyway, I was the one delivering the message. You're not going to be charged. Parents aren't going to be charged if we're not playing, okay? But that means the coaches also will not be getting paid. And they still have a responsibility financially for their mortgages or rent or whatever.
Yeah.
So I said, what we're asking is for teams, and I'm happy to be an intermediary, teams to still pay coaches a stipend through this to get them through. Because what's going to happen is when we're done with this scary time, there's going to be a vacuum. So coaches, and it's happening more and more, will just leave the game and just pursue a different path in life that's more, maybe a healthier balance for their time. And as they're responsible to their families, or they'll just choose a different club.
Yeah.
You know, so if we want to keep our intellectual property, if we want to keep our coaches, we had a really good staff, we're going to have to give them. I'm not saying you got to pay them full freight, but you got to help them. And honest to God, I just had that one meeting with all like the team managers and treasurers and stuff. And there was probably a half a dozen follow-up phone calls. And not all of our coaches got paid full freight, but they were very well taken care of.
That's good.
So there's a special community for that to happen. And that's what earlier I was talking about. The managers are maybe the most important people in the club. There's an example of that in real life. And I don't mean to say it dismissively against any of our coaches or any other person's role. But they're in so many ways the glue, you know. And when we needed them, they came through.
How long have you been back at Madonna?
So my mom would say that the former AD, Brian Rizzo, put the Catholic guilt on me, and Eric Scott was coaching the men. Eric's awesome. I don't know if you know him.
I know of him.
What a cool dude, man. He's so good for the game and just an incredible human being. He is a good soccer player. Grew up in Redford, played for Livonia, but ended up playing football for Albion, like kicking football in college. So as much as Madonna's my second home, Albion was his second home. Well, the Madonna job was part-time and paid like a high school coach, but full-time work, you know. So the job opened up for him to coach women's soccer, which was full-time, in I think 2012 or 2013. And he took that job. So he called me just because I'm an alum and I'm coaching the area, and then the athletic director. When I was coaching the women, it was the same athletic director, Brian Rizzo. He's now the athletic director at Macomb. So he called me and said, hey, would you be interested? Can you come back here for a few years and kind of, you know, serve the program? So I said, all right, I'll give you 3 or 4 years if I can manage it. You know, I need to respect my other work because I have demands and financially, you know, the Madonna's not paying the bills. So not volunteer, but feels like it virtually. So he was good with it. And so 2013 was the first fall that I came back, and now I'm 2026. So I've given him my 3 or 4 years. I'm too stubborn. So yeah, it's been kind of a second home. It's not a scenario where trying to do a good job at Madonna to go somewhere else. I'm not trying to use it to go somewhere else. Just trying to make Madonna the best it can be. And in honoring of Madonna, you know, a lot of the NAI schools in Division II, you know, there's different, you know, sort of standards in terms of their academic. Madonna's academics are really good.
Yeah.
Nursing program is sort of the high. This surgeries I had this fall, the nurses will come in and try to calm you and like, hey, we got to take your blood pressure well, where do you work? You know, what do you do? I coach every single one. Oh, Madonna, great nursing program. Oh, Madonna, great nursing program. Great nursing program. So, Yeah, the academics are the guiding light as much as the men's soccer coach would like athletics to be, let's say, as
forefront.
equally as favored or supported. That's not the case. Academics first. So we've been, we're not funded in a way where we're expected to win, so to speak. And the school's like, hey, we want the kids to have a good experience. We want you to graduate students. That's our mission. We want to graduate students. So many of the kids that come to Madonna are old souls. They're, if you think of like the renowned majors at Madonna, it's kind of the glue people in society. It's teachers, nurses. We have a really good forensic science program, criminal justice, that type of stuff. We have other, computer science is strong. We have a TV studio on campus. Probably should have done this in the TV studio. People come over from channel like 2, channel 4, channel 7 news to work with the students. And they're like, hey, your TV studio is nicer than ours TV studio. So there are some outliers in terms of academics, but it's kind of, we tend to, I think, attract old souls because of the majors that we have. People that tend to come to Madonna want to give back to their community, through their professional work. So we're spoiled that way, in terms of the quality of the kids that we get. So yeah, it's been cool. I don't know how I would react to being under a lot of pressure to win. I have felt it in the club game. Mm-hmm. But in the college game, the pressure that I feel it from myself and the guys on the team. It's not coming from administration like, right. Hey, your budgets are XYZ, so you should, this is the process we've invested. Now this is the outcome we want. We've had some hard years and we've been fortunate with some good ones. And honestly, the thank you note at the end of the year is the same. Thank you for helping these young men. Appreciate the life lessons. Appreciate your support of their academic experience, and keep up the good work. Type conjecture. So, but that's been comfortable. So it's been a hell of a coaching laboratory. And I don't want to say that at the expense of the kids that have come through the program, but to work with them. We're very global. We have ESL, so if the kids don't pass the TOEFL English exam, we can still take them.
Okay.
So it wasn't an overt political or social agenda. It was like we want the best kids who are the best students, who are the best players. And even though I'm from Livonia, we're gonna. If the kid's from Japan, he's from Japan. If he's from Sao Paulo, Brazil, he's from Sao Paulo. We want. So there's been an amazing camaraderie and connectedness between the kids of the different international countries, as well as our local kids tend to be like Wayne and Oakland County. They tend to be like really local, who haven't traveled as much, haven't seen the world as much yet. But they become each other's families. For the international kids, they are each other's family when they're here. Most of them can't afford to be flying back home.
Yeah.
So, the holidays, the off time, a lot of the families of our local kids really connect with kind of take them in and make sure they get a home cooked meal, and the greater community at large. We have a large Japanese population in Novi. Our Japanese guys feel really comfortable with just culturally. They go to a sushi house, get food like home, and in that community, they're religious centers. There's a comfort level there.
Yeah.
So that diversity of the metro area, we have a hospital right on campus. I still call it St. Mary's Hospital, in the big business of medicine now, Trinity, I think it's called. So, we're in the suburbs, and there's a lot of, another reason we get a lot of internationals is what I take for granted. There's such a strong economy built by the automotives and now with technology and other industries for internships or future employment. We have Bosch, we have a plant 6 minutes away from school. Well, the German kids are thinking, maybe I want to stay in the U.S., or maybe I want to go back to Germany, live somewhere else. But Bosch, if I get in with Bosch, I can work globally.
Anywhere.
Yeah. So for me, being a product of this environment, I was a little bit naive to that. I learned that from the kids, and their parents in the Zoom meetings and recruiting. So if I travel to Wixom or I travel somewhere else, it's on my own dollar. Like there's no budget to go recruit kids, internationally or even in Grand Rapids. If I go there, it's because I'm leaning into it.
Right.
So it's not as if we're funded for that, but we started to get an international trend. It happened organically. There was a kid out of Brazil who played at a real strong NAI program, Rio Grande.
Yeah.
He was living like right where University of Windsor, right over the Ambassador Bridge.
Okay.
And he played, this is like, I'm going to make this up and say it's 2014, 2015 type time frame. And he was playing on a summer men's team with and against some of our guys in the same league. And they were talking, Madonna, we play at Madonna. He's like, oh, you have a couple good players, you know, can I come to Madonna, finish my degree? I did 2 years at Rio, and I've just been in Canada working. So we were able to sign him. He played for us. But what changed our trajectory, which was not a plan, I can assure you, is he's I call him a little bit of a Hollywood guy. So we win a game or tie, he gets a goal and it's just whatever. He's on social media. Well, all of a sudden, in the next 2-3 weeks, I start getting all these emails, kids that want to play Madonna from Brazil, you know, and it took me too long to figure out. I'm on my back foot, like him promoting himself, so to speak, and Madonna Soccer on social media. That was the marketing for free, you know. So his old coaches are seeing it, his former teammates are seeing it, his neighborhood, his family. So Madonna's all of a sudden being marketed in Brazil, you know, and he's putting up video clips and stuff, you know, so it's really powerful. So it wasn't like a social agenda, or it wasn't financed through the school. It was just sort of organic, you know, and it just grew. And now there's these recruiting agencies a lot of these international kids will link up with. And Madonna's on a little bit of a short list because we have ESL.
Right.
Like, if you don't feel comfortable taking higher academic classes, even if you can speak the language okay, writing papers in English is different. You could start in ESL, even if it's just one semester.
Right.
So it's kind of a soft landing for the kids. And then in Metro Detroit, you know, all the diversity through the automotive industry and the overall economy. And they can look up Livonia, pretty safe, hospital right on campus. They can look up our records. All of our home games are on a YouTube channel. And it's crazy. Like, again, I'm saying swear word always and never. Almost all the, I call those swear words. The other stuff we call colorful language. But almost all the local kids that express interest, I say, hey, have you watched us play? And they're like, oh no, your games conflict. We don't have lights. A lot of our games are at 3:00.
Right.
And I'm like, well, no, all of our home games are on the YouTube channel. And you can just kind of see the look. And I'm not trying to back them into a corner, but you can just see the look on that. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about researching. And the amount of the international kids, again, always a swear word, but almost all of them, oh yeah, I've seen you play. I looked up your YouTube channel. I like your style of play. You know, they're just, I don't know if it's more aware or mature, or maybe the agencies. It's a very small population. And most of our answers to the international interest and domestic are no, because financially we're not.
We can't give you the.
We're not the Moneyball game. You know, we're not the cheapest game in town. So
right.
There's a kid, man, this is a couple months now. There's a kid that was playing for Palmeiras, just like U20s. And he talked about a kid that jumped off a computer screen with highlight video, like this kid. And one of our assistants, Marlon's a former player who's from Brazil. I sent the video to him. I go, can you check on this kid? And he goes, yeah. I reached out to him, social media or WhatsApp or something. He goes, hey, I thought he was going to be a pro. I bet he thought he was going to be a pro. I think he's going to be a pro too. Let's get him on a Zoom meeting, you know. Start out the Zoom meeting, and the kid's like, trying to figure out. And the assistant, who knows a little bit about our budget, because he's heard me saw off on it a few times,
right.
is like, hey, coach, he was kind of afraid to tell me, like, he's wondering how much we're going to pay him. He didn't make Palmeiras' like first team, so they're like brooming him, you know. Well, he thought he was going to be a pro, so his grades weren't good. We give him a lot of academic scholarship. We can make it very affordable. But we really like need kids with like good grades, and then the money stacks up, you know. So we don't exclusively chase kids that have a 3.8, but we favor kids with good grades. We don't shy away from that. I don't think they're any smarter, but I think they're more mature to finish their work. They take it serious. But for us in Moneyball, they get a lot more money. It makes it more affordable. But this kid's GPA, I mean, it would have cost us I said, hey, man, my stomach like hurts saying this, but we're not able, if I give you the money that you need to come here, we won't have a good team. Like, I think we're sort of, let's compare the NBA where it's like 5-on-5.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, not always, the top 3 players on the team in a 5-on-5, the top 3 win the game.
Yes.
In our game, I think the bottom 2 guys on the field lose the game. We have to be good at every position. You can't just have 3 guys in a game of 11-11 and always win the game, particularly in college, because we play some really good teams and we play some teams that struggle a bit. There's just a really broad range in the NAIA. But the kids that aren't as technical, if you will, they're very physical. It's very hard to break them down. And the coaches are all good. Like the teams are well organized.
Yeah.
So it's still hard, you know. With the substitution rules, something our international guys have trouble sort of acclimating to is they're playing for youth teams in a pro system. And at some point they get cut out of the pro pathway. So they're more mature that way, you know. But in terms of how they play the game, when they get subbed out, they're out. Well, in the world I'm living in, if you get subbed out in the first half,
You're coming back in.
You get another chance in the second half. And then in the second half, if you're a little bit gassed or winded.
I could sub you off and then put you back in.
Yeah, you get one re-entry. So the pace of the game never slows down for the better soccer. It's always a crazy speed because of the substitution rules. And there's no limit on how many kids you play in a game in the world I live in. You know, not say we want to play 24 guys a game. We need to have a rhythm. But there's no limit. There's no rule. So when the standard starts to suffer, coaches can just put in fresh legs. You know, I'm not saying the quality stays the same, but kids are fit, kids are strong, they're organized, they're tough to beat. So it's just so challenging, and the international guys kind of struggle with that. They're especially, you know, stereotyping here a little bit, but the South American guys are looking to slow the speed of the play down to let their skill show, and they're kind of passing not to play a player out of the game, not passing to penetrate. They're passing just to move the defense and kind of tire them out, like sideline to sideline.
You can't tire anybody out.
And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. They're just going to have new kids. So culturally, we had some hard years about trying to find common ground about our style of play and our vision and what will work. And I'm very grateful to the guys in the program because they'll big brother the new guys off the field and on the field. Not on the field, a lot of it is like, hey, that's not effective here. I understand that worked back at home, but that doesn't work here. You have to adjust to the game you're playing here. And when the guys hear it from their big brothers in the program, it has a lot more weight than me chatting them up in the middle of a training session, you know?
Did you look at it like that when you were coaching the women back in the day too? Like the subbing patterns and stuff like that? How there wasn't a drop?
I always thought we needed 18 kids that could play in the starting 11. I still think that. Like we went to the national tournaments last year, and we had 4 or 5 starters out of our starting 11. They just got worn down, like non-contact injuries. We go 6 days a week, you know, for months on end, and the kids they don't have a deep base fitness. And we're asking a lot of them. And there were some unfortunate, you know, I don't want to go on a referee rant, but we had some unfortunate tackles laid into us that put some guys out. I thought this year we had a special team, and we ended up losing in the second round, 4-3 in overtime, to the team that lost in the national final, like 2-1. I thought we were right there. And I'm never sure that we're going to be. We've been able to win our conference 6 of the last 9 years in the regular season.
And you're in a tough conference.
Yeah, Indiana Tech has won the conference tournament 7 years in a row. So they've been impressive. But yeah, 6 of the last 9 years, like we've had a couple like really cool generations come through. And now we had a lot of really good seniors this last fall who are graduating out. So we had a really good fall, and our spring was not as productive. So we're leaning into our guys for what they're doing in the summer, and we're bringing in a bunch of kids that are going to have an open run at playing time.
How's the health of the NAIA as a whole? I mean, we lost Siena Heights.
Yeah, it's weird. And just in our conference, we used to play against Mary Grove.
Gone.
We used to play against Siena Heights.
Gone.
We used to play against Concordia.
Gone.
And now Lourdes.
Lourdes, just, yeah.
So I think that's happening a lot of different places.
Right.
We're not. It's not just in our conference in our part
It's
of
not
the
just
country.
NAIA either.
Right. Yeah, I think higher ed is struggling. Just the cost to go to school, and I don't know the answer to that riddle. Why does it cost so much? I asked the guy that's running our head of finance here several years ago. I'm like, what? It's not the teachers. I mean, it's not people. I think sometimes on the outside of the walls of education think the professors are tenured and sitting on stacks of money. I'm like, that's not true. Not at Madonna. And some great teachers and professors, but they're not, that's not where all the money's going. He's like, Coach, you have no idea how much everyone wants to put up new buildings. You don't know how much, you don't realize how much it costs to maintain those buildings and those parking lots. And those costs are just, everybody wants the new cathedral. It takes money to build it, but it takes money to maintain it. So there's just such a high expectation, not for the value of education, but for the value of the lifestyle. And an example, I would love to tell our recruits, hey, the men's soccer guys get free tutoring. Well, the truth is, and I'm just brutally honest with families, like every student at Madonna has access to free tutoring. Well, the truth is, tutoring's not free. I mean, it's all baked into the tuition, right? So there's a standard, like when I was going to school at Madonna, we didn't have free tutoring available to us. Then the new dorms, it's like this lifestyle that's well beyond just the bones of an education. Whether it's the amenities of the new dorm rooms or the free tutoring or the higher quality food in the dorms, like all that costs, and it's all baked into the tuition. So there's like this arms race, in terms of the value of the education and the value of the experience, and now there's not a lot of alternatives,
Do you feel like, I feel like what you just said about how people view like standing on stacks of money, all these teachers and the professors and stuff, I feel like that's going on in soccer clubs too. That everybody thinks that everybody's making millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. And it's like, there's not that much money because you don't realize how much Wixom takes to rent it or indoor, or after all the dust settles, there's not that much left over.
No, yeah, it's strange in the margins. And I just think in the soccer, I don't feel comfortable saying this, but I'm going to say soccer industry. Yeah. In the soccer path, there's such a broad range of what people. There was a club, not from Metro Detroit. The director was talking about applying to the Directors Academy for MSYSA, and the director of the club called me and was kind of looking for a little bit of a cheat sheet of, hey, I know you look over the applications and give some feedback to the state office. Like, what do you look for? What is it worth me applying? Was the real question. So I started about staffing and licenses and standards. And right away, she's like, well, we don't have the money. We don't have the money. And I told her how much I made working for the Rush in Northville and really downriver in Northville and Jackson Lansing. And I was a poor man's consultant, very much so at Jackson Lansing, because I was so rooted in Northville and downriver. I was more a phone call away than I was, hitting the hard yards with them. But I said, well, this is how much I would, and I didn't realize how much other people were making, quite frankly. I was very naive to that, as well as many other things. But I said, I just think there's a broad range. I don't think all coaches are expecting to make what you're telling me they need to make and you don't have the budget for,
Exactly.
But so much of the budget is going to what I call the infrastructure, the referee assigner, the field rentals. People don't know behind the scenes in terms of the cost of goals and insurance. I mean, it's a lot of heavy lifting of money that you just don't see.
Yep.
You know, what they see is the coach. And the coaches, I think, are hypersensitive to feeling like they're doing honorable work and that they're valued. And I think that gets misconstrued into the feeling that you need to win, you know, because parent expectations are so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And coaches don't all, but it's kind of common to think like the lowest common denominator, like the parents, I have to win. They're paying a lot of money. Like they feel that pressure, you know. Well, they don't all expect you to win every game.
Right.
A lot of them, you know. So, but the coaches feel like they're being scrutinized, and sometimes they are. Let's be honest. But I think their coaches are overly sensitive about it. But it's a tough world. I sometimes talk to our athletic director, who's been great for us here at Madonna. He's our basketball. He's in the Hall of Fame as a basketball player.
Yeah.
He's our current basketball coach, they've been really successful the last few years. Under his coaching, and he's also athletic director. And I'm kind of talking in jest. I'm kind of being a bad smart aleck because I really believe in the power of education. But I said, hey, man, like our scores are on the website. Whether it's the referee's fault or the weather, our scores are on the website. What if everybody's grades were on a website? You know, what if it was all public? You know, wondering why all the coaches are always skittish, you know? Like, I need the next player. I need this. We feel like every decision carries the whole weight of our season. They're just amplified. You know, we're so out of proportion because we just feel like every decision, every moment impacts that result. And we want to do the best for our group, that we want to do the best for our kids. We want to honor our alumni. And, you know, hopefully they look on us in a proud way. And we feel like we're under so much pressure, just trying to do the best we can, you know. When I say we, I mean the coaching community in general. So it just gets distorted, you know, because we've all heard the horror stories of the parents. Well, they don't like this coach.
Oh, yeah.
I was talking to a director. I know State Cup's not what it used to be a generation ago, but just want a State Cup, you know. And the parents are like, "Yeah, we want a new coach," you know. And it's like, was he swearing at kids or what? No, he just the kids. He didn't rotate the subs in enough. Or thought there was too much of a co-op. Well, they wouldn't have won state. It's like, so what do you want? You know, do you want to win State Cup or everybody equal playing time? It's like sometimes the coaches feel like they just can't make everyone happy, you know, and then they're trusting their directors to support them. It's a very vulnerable place. You know, I have a lot of empathy for, and I've been there, man. You know, I've lived it. You know, so.
Do you miss being on the field?
Yeah, and I'm still connected. I mean, with the Madonna guys, I'm putting in some hard yards. I mean, we're very active. I'm coaching players.
What about the club?
6 days a week.
What about the club game?
I'm kind of substitute teacher. You know, I'll hop in. It's not the same. It's not the same connection. Players don't know me. I don't know them.
Right.
They're not comfortable with my activities, the language that I use, in terms of some phrases. It's just new to them. So, and I'm hit and miss. The thing that I liked most about the youth game, I really liked coaching teams for just 1 year, actually. And I know that a lot of people are split on that, but I really felt so much like value and satisfaction. It's my misguided ego. I felt so much like satisfaction when I was done coaching a group of players, but I would watch them still in the club. I'd kind of watch them grow up. I wasn't coaching them, but I really enjoy guys like an Eric Rudlin or Nick Darren or those guys coaching them after I'm done. I was like, if I had kids, I would want my kids playing for those guys.
Right.
You know? But to watch them do their work with those kids that I used to coach, I just felt like that was so cool. I got such a sense of satisfaction of, and I put my work in with them. I just gave them a little bit of an imprint of the game for a year or two, and then I want to just watch them keep going. I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that trajectory in the youth club where you just watch a kid grow up.
Yeah.
You know?
How many of all your stops in Europe and in South America that you just went and observed, how many of those academies only had one age group coach, whereas they were only with a team for a year?
Good question, yeah. And I felt like for continuity reasons, most of the time I had a team for 2 years from experience, but my preference was to be.
Right.
But there were some teams where I wasn't a good fit, whether I was pushing the girls or guys more than they wanted to be pushed, or the parents thought I should, they had different expectations of what I thought the team was capable of. There were some teams that I've had from the age of, 20 to 49, where it's like, hey, this isn't a good fit. But most of the time in the first year, it went pretty well. I felt myself, one of my flaws, and there are many, in the second year, like if I'm saying the same thing to the kid, I don't think it's like you need to get faster, but it's like a decision or an awareness of like, I'm not getting through to this kid. I'm frustrated at myself, getting kind of frustrated at the kid, like he's not responding to the coaching. Most of the frustration that I would feel impacting players, I felt like in the youth was in like the second year. It wasn't the first year. The first year I felt like I could really get a lot accomplished. But some of those things that weren't changing in the player, I felt like the second year I would get a little bit more cagey. And then it was easy for me because at the time, inappropriate comment, my misguided ego, I could get rid of myself pretty easily. Just put my hand up and say, hey, we're going to have a new coach. I don't feel like I'm getting across what we need to get across. So I wouldn't say it was my fault or the kid's fault or anyone else's fault. I would say it's not a good fit, So it was easy for me to, but I really looked forward to guys like an Eric Rudline or Nick Deere taking the team over and just taking them to the next layer. Like we're all just one spoke in a big wheel, and we just put our time in, the kid goes on. I know Ajax was pretty firm about the 1 year, almost like a specialist. I remember talking to Mark Plisick. We had him back for MSYSA for coaching ed piece, and he coached a youth team at Borussia Dortmund when Christian was there.
Right.
And Mark's got a UFA. He's legit, not only as a former player, and Kelly, Christian's mom, was a big-time player.
You're right.
But he's also a legit coach. So they hired him to I don't remember if it was a U12, U13 Borussia Dortmund, like academy team. And he said they were pretty consistent with 1 year. But he did share that coaches were looking to sort of move up their food chain in terms of their first mountain, their status, economics, a higher profile team. It wasn't toxic, but it was competitive.
Right.
It wasn't, we're all just a bunch of buddies sitting around the Borussia Dortmund Youth Academy office telling each other how good we are. It was iron sharpens iron, let's get better. And, I think of competition, Latin root word competare, we strive together. So I think of it, like we go together. But there's some different thoughts in competition of, we're competing against each other.
Absolutely.
And depending on the culture that you're in, Mark's was like, hey, it was intense, man. He goes, I wasn't like insecure about it, or I wasn't bothered by it because economically I wasn't there to be a Borussia Dortmund youth coach. But for those who are making their living doing that and taking care of families doing that, like it was intense. There's pressure on players, but there's pressure on coaches.
Christian was here for 1 year.
Well, he was here for a few years, but I only had him for 1 year.
Mark was here to Wheels.
He was here to coach the Detroit Ignition.
Detroit Ignition
at the old CompuArena. It's now USA Hockey.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what brought him to Plymouth. So Eric Rudland and Nick Darren and I each were able to work with Christian, and his dad was there.
He was here for 3 years?
Yeah, his dad was the coach. Mark was the coach, and then became the general manager. He brought Bob Lillian, was with the Browns for a long time. They were like college roommates, like really close friends. I just met Bob a couple times. Seemed like a great guy, but Mark, I got closer to. Christian's sister was pretty good too, Dee Dee. She now I'm not going to get this right because I don't know this world, but she like kind of breeds and trains like horses. She's
horseback,
into horses
right?
big time.
Yeah.
I think they moved out of Pennsylvania down to Florida.
Okay.
She has a family of her own now. But
You're right.
But that was her love. But she was a pretty good soccer player.
Yeah.
The parents were awesome parents. They were not.
They're not the helicopter parents.
They weren't pushing out. No, we actually like offered just naively, like we'll give him more. We're like, hey, Christian, 1 year he played up
two age groups. I remember that.
And we're like, well, he could train the other days that team's not training with this other team. And they were like, no, we don't want that. Well, he's going to golf. He's going to play basketball. He's going to hang out with his friends. We want him when he comes to training we want him to run out of the car. If he's not running out of the car to the field, we need to pull him back, And if we have to shout at him a little bit, and they never had to, he's such a nice kid. Well, we need to shout at him to get back in the car. We want him to want to stay on the field. They would say that to us privately. We don't want him doing soccer every day and get burned out. They would play some games in the backyard, as Mark and Kelly were such good players. And Mark said to me one time, they put a trash can in the backyard, and they would work on ball striking. It was empty. They would try to knock it over. So can you hit the top of the trash can? Can you chip it in the trash can? Can you bend it around the trash can? He said they had a couple of trees in the yard. He's like, let's try to hit the ball through those two branches. So they would, but he said, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't let him do that too long. I would pick up the soccer ball and give him a basketball and say, okay, throw a football in the backyard. So he was working on his game, but a lot of it was a little bit unstructured. It was guised as play. And then a little bit of a cheat sheet, Mark and Kelly could
exactly.
ping a ball. So a lot of that, we go back to culture. He's a product of his environment. But yeah, he was special. It wasn't anything to do with us at the time, but and I don't know if it was Mark's playing days as an agent or the family was kind of spread out geographically, so they would share video on YouTube and stuff. So Barcelona got some of his video and flew him over twice during the time that he was
here,
that he was with us.
Yeah, because I remember because it was at Wixom. There's a video I remember vividly the video. He's in the left corner, and then he just dribbles, and he's up against guys maybe a head taller because he's playing up.
Yeah.
And then there was a news thing about oh yeah, he's going to Barcelona. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Michigan Rush kid going to. Little did I know, I forgot that I didn't realize who that was at the time.
Yeah.
It's it's Christian
parents. So Mark and Kelly were just such good stewards, and they were they didn't want to put any pressure on him. He was 9 years old, so they said, hey, for your an early birthday present, you get. He loved Barcelona. And we got you a pass to a camp. You're going to a camp for the week. Well, really, it was a trial. That's what it was, But they didn't want him to change out, play to work.
Yeah.
They still wanted him to play the game. They didn't want to put any of that pressure on him. So our parent, Mark, was I know I shouldn't say. He was very respectful as a parent, so humble. But he's you should have seen him. There was some games towards the end of the week where he just rose to another level. It was unbelievable. So the family wasn't, at that time, they were worried about the play becoming work. Mark had a UFA license, so the FIFA laws and stuff, they could have hired him to coach in La Masia, and then that allows the work permit and the whole family to move. But they didn't want to put that pressure on him. So they just said, hey, thanks, but we're not saying no, but not yet. So I don't know the details. Barcelona was asking for keep sending video. They stayed in touch. And then I think it was after the third year, they had a leadership change, and Mark was out of a job with Ignition. He did a great job.
Yeah.
But whatever the values were of the leadership group, they wanted to move on. So they went back to Pennsylvania. He kind of grew up playing for the Classics, and then Borussia Dortmund. But I always felt a little bit uncomfortable. The Rush, not in a negative way. It wasn't manipulative or anything, but they wanted us to take some credit almost, like Mark. And I always felt I told them one year at the convention, Mark and Kelly presented, and kind of like, I'm going to say this in an inarticulate way, but like responsible parent type topic. And I told them that, and Kelly was like, "Oh, Christian loved his time. You shouldn't feel like guilty about that." I'm like, and Mark kind of nodded, like, "Hey, I appreciate." Not that he wanted the spotlight; they were awesome the whole way through. But I go, I just didn't feel good about it, And the Michigan Rush did some things, and the Rush soccer guys did some things, but I said, "Hey, my claim to fame is I didn't mess him up. It's not like I developed him. The kid was special. Came from him and his parents. So, but they were just tremendous people. Last time I saw Mark, he was like, "Hey, how's Eric? How's Nick?" Nice, cool people.
Because wasn't he going to be he was at the expo.
Yeah. I asked him to come back, and we had him in for MSYSA. Several years ago, and he compared player development in Borussia Dortmund versus what U.S. soccer is doing. So, because he's lived in both worlds,
right? And
he wasn't anti-American. He was,
of course,
he's a product of that system, So, it was just a really good comparison for what's important in Germany at these ages. What do you focus on? How do you select players? How often are there tryouts for new kids coming in?
Right.
How does Borussia Dortmund really work versus a youth team in America? So he did a kind of a comparison and contrast. And then he also brought in Vis. At the time, he was assisting Bob Lilly at the Riverhounds, Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and Visser was an assistant as well. So he brought Vis with him, who's now the general manager. And Vis talked more about some 11v11 tech, how the Pittsburgh Riverhounds prepare tactically. What do they do in training? What's their rhythm like? So it's a really cool coaching ed event MSYSA put on. And that's when I had last seen Mark face to face. And then I asked him, like, "Hey, we're launching this expo. Would you mind doing something similar and coming back?" And he was just so gracious. He was, "Hey, I don't need a flight. I don't need I don't need anything. I'm happy to come back. You guys were great to us. We love the area. We still have friends in the area. Happy to come back for a couple of days." So he came back to the expo last year. I don't know if I can twist his arm again, but
hopefully.
Yeah. He's been great.
Awesome.
So
thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Dude.
I don't know if
we're at like 2.5 hours.
I don't know if I covered the ground you wanted me to cover.
No, man, this is just a conversation. This is just me and you catching up, telling some stories.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your work in the game, man. And I thought you were a tremendous young coach, and I knew you were out in Buffalo working in the game. And then I started seeing the podcast come up on like my algorithm because I'm like, I don't read as much as I should. I'm listening to podcasts and audiobooks. I'm like, Jay, come on, man. He's preaching, man. He's preaching.
And then, yeah, it's crazy. And this has been it's been an education though. Being able to talk to guys like you.
That's how I feel about my job. Like I go watch coaches like every day. How spoiled am I to go watch guys like Mike Scobie, Eric Wedlin, Pete Pazowski, like Nick Darren I watched last week, and gave him some feedback. We really got into the weeds, and these guys are so good,
You've always been observing. I remember you were done at Madonna, and then you just went to OU.
Yeah.
And watched Parsons and Pope.
For a full fall. Yeah.
For a full fall, just watched them.
I was kind of fly on the wall, yeah. I was a little bit burned out with the Madonna women and the club stuff, how much I was pouring into it for the lack of resources. The girls were great. But I really ran myself. And I wanted to really reflect in a really serious way. And I'd always heard so many good things about Gary Parsons, and the open program's always been so successful. Poggy and I grew up together, but playing against each other, but we didn't know it. He's a 76, Tino's a 76, Tino Cicluna, Demir's a 76. We all grew up playing in the same league.
Okay.
We didn't recognize it until we started, got our coaching chops in. But so Poggy felt comfortable. He was kind of learning the craft to take over. But Gary was the godfather. And I was like, "Hey, man, my schedule's busy, but I want to learn more about the game. I just got done with a shift running a small college program. I know I made a lot of mistakes. I know I did some things okay. But to reflect, I want to compare it against something. Are you guys okay if I'm like a volunteer? I don't need to get paid. I don't have time to travel with you, but I'd like to be at the home games in the training ground to watch and learn how you run a program. And Gary was pretty guarded at first. Like, what's your real agenda? You know? And I think I haven't convinced many people of many things, but I think I just kind of came across as being honest. And he circled back to me. He goes, let's have one more meeting. And I think, I don't know this, but I think Poggi had helped convince him as well. Like, he doesn't have an agenda. He's not looking to bring
Take
any
your
toxic
job,
stuff.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
He just wants to learn. And Gary didn't believe it, to be honest. The first time, he's like, no, what do you really want? I'm like, no, that's it.
I want to learn from you.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Teach me your ways.
You've won every year. You've been coaching here.
Yeah.
Like, you've never had a losing record. Thinking I can learn a few things. So it ended up being really cool. Real cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I appreciate you in the game and what you're doing for the game. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm embarrassed to say this is my first podcast. I've always shied away from. I'm always afraid I'm going to say some silly things, and
No, man.
it's going to be recorded. But
A lot of people are going to learn a lot from you,
No.
like I have.
It's all good. We're just small spoke on a real big wheel, you know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for your time, brother.
Thanks.
Good.
I hate soccer.